Chapter 759. A Tier 1 Divine level expert would be able to separate out a portion of their martial will and attach it to another person's body as a clone-like existence. When it came to a Tier 3 Divine level existence like Feng Xingjian, who had merged his will and physical body into one, he could even split out a portion of his martial will, turning it into a true clone and controlling it from afar. The one who had been keeping watch at Beverly Hills was one of Feng Xingjian's clones. As for his actual body, he had arrived on the moon a long time ago and had carved his reincarnation sword technique on the moon in Chinese. The densely packed Chinese characters were engraved on the surface of the moon. Almost everyone who saw the surface of the moon would notice the abnormality. If they used a telescope to look, they would be able to see the content of the characters. During this time, the video of Feng Xingjian's show had gradually spread. Although ABC radio and TV station clarified that it was just a trailer for a TV series, everyone thought that it was just a trailer for a TV series. But because of the initial debate and the realistic image, it still spread around the world, except for one famous incident on the internet. And it was precisely because of such foreshadowing that when a piece of news started to spread on the internet, the entire human society gradually became excited. Have you heard? That Feng Xingjian's superpower is real. He has carved the training method on the surface of the moon. How is this possible? If you don't believe me, go take a look. You'll know when you see the moon tonight. Conversations like this kept popping up on the internet. Of course, it was the American region where the moon first appeared. Not long after the moon changed, the entire American region was in an uproar. Although the engravings were in Chinese, there were too many people in the Americas who understood Chinese. Soon, someone translated the contents of the moon's surface into English. I am Feng Xingjian. This is a set of swordsmanship that I have left behind for mankind. This first sentence alone was enough to change the entire history of mankind. Countless forums, Twitter, and Facebook topics exploded. Almost overnight, everyone's topic couldn't deviate from the changes on the moon. This time, the result of the online debate was almost one-sided in favor of Feng Xingjian. Superpowers are real. His cultivation method was engraved on the moon. Idiot, how can it be superpowers? This must be a trap. What do you say about the words on the moon? Could it be that this is also fake? It must have been carved by NASA. They have been on the moon for a long time. Idiot, every word on it is bigger than a sports field in order to let us see it. Do you think NASA can engrave it in one day? At first, there were people who were led by the government's Internet Water Army to refute the authenticity of superpowers, but soon, under the bright moon hanging high in the sky, the Internet Water Army retreated in defeat. No one believed them at all. It could be imagined that as the bright moon continued to hang in the sky, more and more people would attempt to cultivate the reincarnation sword. As the words carved on the moon were Chinese, it was foreseeable that there would be more and more people learning Chinese in the future. In order to have a deeper understanding of the content of the sword techniques, Chinese was likely to become the most popular language on Earth. Outside the hall, the dark knight looked at the bright moon in the sky and sighed. You've brought about a disaster. Disaster. In the sky above the moon, Feng Xingjian arrived at the back of the moon. This will be a revolution. Before Feng Xingjian, the entire back of the moon was engraved with a huge Chinese character. It was a huge left character, and it almost filled up the entire back of the moon. If the moon were to be rotated, everyone would be able to see that the left character had been engraved on the moon. This? Who did this? Feng Xingjian narrowed his eyes and asked the Dark Knight, do you guys know about the writing on the back of the moon? With Earth's technology and extraordinary powers, they should definitely know about the writing on the back of the moon. The Dark Knight threw a glance at him and said, I know. That writing had been discovered almost immediately after the United States landed on the moon in the last century. After that, several countries had spent a tremendous amount of manpower and resources to study the profoundness behind it, but they had not been able to find anything. It was because regardless of whether it was robots, astronauts, or even extraordinary humans who were as strong as Caesar, none of them could get close to that writing. All detection methods were ineffective as well. It seemed as if the writing had been formed naturally, and there were no signs of it being man-made. However, How could it have been formed naturally? Although they had not been able to find out the reason, many people felt that this could be an imprint left behind by the earliest extraordinary humans on Earth. Hearing the Dark Knight's reply, Feng Xingjian walked toward the supernatural relic before him, heading toward that huge writing. When he was 500 meters away, Feng Xingjian could already see a huge mountain that was several hundred meters tall standing before him. It was the protruding part that formed the writing. However, from this moment onward, Feng Xingjian realized that with each step he took, he would be able to sense a strong resistance from the air. It was as if an ordinary person kept on venturing deeper into a trench. The increasingly strong resistance kept on pressing down on his body, stopping his every move. What a powerful martial will. Feng Xingjian's countenance changed. He had not expected that he would be able to encounter the power of martial will in this parallel Earth. Did it not mean that there had also been night-type cultivators in this world in the past? Sensing the increasingly strong resistance coming from all directions, Feng Xingjian let out a cold snort and sent his all-conquering sword intent sweeping out. The sword intent, which was mixed with the profoundness of electromagnetism, slashed through the resistance, and he dashed forward as if he had entered an unstoppable state. In the blink of an eye, he had already broken through layers of obstacles and arrived 100 meters before the writing. However, the closer he got, the greater the increase in the resistance. When he was within 100 meters of the writing, Feng Xingjian sensed that there was an omnipresent resistance, and its output was almost the same as that of a Tier 3 or even 4 divine level expert. Sensing that it was getting increasingly difficult to advance, Feng Xingjian's brows twitched, and the sword light in his eyes burst out. An extremely strong, all-conquering sword intent slashed through the air, emitting a silhouette that was like a torn piece of cloth. Feng Xingjian took this opportunity to dash forward, advancing another 200 meters. With this breakthrough of 200 meters, the world's resistance suddenly disappeared. It's unknown how many years this writing has existed for it to still be able to retain such a strong power. What is the cultivation of the person who left this writing? Feng Xingjian was secretly surprised. What made him even more curious was who had left this writing here. Could it be the person who filled this world with ether particles? Based on Feng Xingjian's thoughts, this Earth should not have had ether particles or extraordinary powers to begin with. It should have been an expert who had come to this parallel world when he was striving for the 9-tiered heavens, filling up the entire world with ether particles. That person should have been in existence similar to Feng Xingjian in another parallel world. There were people who cultivated the path of nights in the modern world. For example, the parallel world's Feng Xingjian. But based on the historical records of this world before the appearance of ether particles, the United States had already completed the moon landing and discovered this writing. As he was thinking, Feng Xingjian had already leaped to the center of the writing. Under the senses of his sudden inspiration, he landed in the center of the writing and landed on the ground. Before him, a figure was sitting cross-legged with his back facing him. Chapter 760. Seeing the figure's appearance, a hint of surprise appeared on Feng Xingjian's face. It was not because of the figure's identity. It was because Feng Xingjian's martial will had long since scanned the other party's identity. It was just a stone sculpture. What astonished Feng Xingjian was that the stone sculpture had actually been carved in his appearance. The entire stone sculpture was exactly the current him. It had the same face, the same brows, and even the same head of black hair. It was dressed in black robes, barefooted, and sat cross-legged on the ground with its eyes closed. What made Feng Xingjian even more surprised was that there was a sentence written in Chinese on the stone sculpture's chest. Formation Breaker Feng. Feng Xingjian's eyes narrowed unknowingly. It was clear that the other party had long since predicted his arrival. What kind of ability was this? After so many years, he was able to predict his arrival in advance, and even his appearance was perfectly predicted. What kind of ability was this? However, what was the other party's motive for doing this? To flaunt his ability to predict? Feng Xingjian released his martial will abruptly, instantly scanning the space within a range of several kilometers. There were no abnormalities, and he then aimed his martial will toward the interior of the stone sculpture. At first glance, the interior of the human body seemed to be just an ordinary stone sculpture. It looked no different from the surrounding stones. However, Feng Xingjian revealed a strange expression. It was unknown how long this stone sculpture had been on the surface of the moon. Even the words in the surroundings had encountered all sorts of meteors, meteorites, and cosmic radiation. However, this stone sculpture appeared to be extremely lifelike and had not suffered any damage. This in itself was the greatest abnormality. At the thought of this, Feng Xingjian's eyes suddenly narrowed, and the scanning scale of his martial will was magnified once again, reaching the nanometer level. When striving for the divine level, the scale of one's martial will would need to be able to keep on going deeper into the microscopic world to observe. This was something that divine level experts greatly favored. With just this deep observation, Feng Xingjian immediately noticed something different. The stone texture of the entire stone sculpture was too uniform. Every inch of the stone texture was almost exactly the same. It was as if all the molecular and atomic structures were arranged in the same way. I see. Feng Xingjian's eyes narrowed slightly, and the next moment, he went deeper again. This time, he went from the nanometer level to the picometer level. Almost every inch of space had countless special points, and the positions of these points were slightly different from the other parts of the space. They looked like tiny dots carved into the stone. Feng Xingjian looked at the densely packed dots inside the stone sculpture with a puzzled look on his face. These dots, is there anything special about it? Feng Xingjian couldn't figure it out, so he went deeper again. This time, he went from picometers to femtometers. This time, Feng Xingjian was slightly stunned. One had to know that 10 femtometers was almost the size of an atomic nucleus. At the femtometer level of observation, almost every atomic nucleus seemed to be surrounded by a vast void. One could only see other atomic nuclei from a very, very far distance, just like the vacuum of the universe. Under such circumstances, Feng Xingjian was still able to sense the existence of the singularity. These dots are smaller than atomic nuclei? What are they? Feng Xingjian continued to go deeper, and the microscopic scale continued to magnify before him. However, the singularity continued to maintain its original size. Even when Feng Xingjian's martial will reached its limits, the singularity still didn't change at all. It was still the same size, shining in void space like the stars in the universe. However, Feng Xingjian could no longer go deeper. He had already reached the smallest limit of the spatial scale. If he were to go deeper, it would be the space-time domain, where time and space would merge into one. Based on his experience in striving for the divine level, it would be a passageway that led to countless other universes. Even with his current abilities, it would be impossible for him to pass through it. He would only die after depleting all his powers. However, even after reaching the limits of the spatial scale, the singularity was still not the limit. What did this mean? Feng Xingjian's gaze suddenly flickered, and he looked toward the point at the very bottom. This singularity was 0. 1 centimeters, or rather 101 centimeters from the ground. If one were to go deeper, it would be 1,011 centimeters. As long as Feng Xingjian's observations continued to shrink, the height of the singularity would continue to be updated. When it reached the limits of the spatial scale, it would be a long string of numbers formed from zeros and ones. If one were to calculate it based on some human codes, this would be a sentence in Chinese. The content of the sentence was also very simple at the beginning. What is light? Feng Xingjian blinked and sensed the densely packed singularity in the stone sculpture's body. He sat down cross-legged and started to use his martial will to sense the many singularity points. More and more data of the singularity points were detected, including the numbers of various distances. All of them were translated into sentences by Feng Xingjian one word at a time. Very soon, Feng Xingjian discovered that this was a set of sword techniques principles. Then, very soon, Fang Xingjian discovered that this set of sword technique was actually somewhat similar to his light pursuit sword. Many profound principles and exquisite sword intents were translated by Fang Xingjian, causing Fang Xingjian to become increasingly engrossed in this set of sword technique. 3 days and 3 nights later, Fang Xingjian's eyes were tightly shut. The stone sculpture before him had already turned into dust and scattered on the moon's surface. Fang Xingjian finally understood what this set of sword technique was. My infiltrating void brings in the profoundness of gravity. The all-conquering sword brings in the profoundness of electromagnetic forces, and a light pursuit sword represents the profoundness of gravity, electromagnetic forces, and strong interaction forces. Fang Xingjian let out a breath. To think that this set of sword technique hidden in the stone sculpture described the profoundness of electromagnetic forces, gravity, and strong interaction forces. This allowed Fang Xingjian to have a deeper understanding toward his light pursuit sword. Gravity, electromagnetic forces, and strong interaction forces are all forces that propagate at light speed in the universe. They are also the only 3 out of the 4 fundamental forces that propagate at light speed. These 3 forces propagate through gravitons, gluons, and photons. However, these 3 great propagating mediums themselves have no mass. And this is the profoundness of the light pursuit sword. At the next moment, Fang Xingjian got up abruptly and tapped out with his sword. The light pursuit sword suddenly exploded, and streams of sword light suddenly burst out from the surface of Fang Xingjian's body. However, the sword light that gushed out this time around far surpassed the millions of sword light he had in the past. The sword light shone down like sunlight, and millions upon millions of sword light shot out explosively, plowing through the ground within a range of several hundred lis. This was like sunlight shining down on Earth. However, each beam of sunlight had a prowess that could slash people like sword light. This was too terrifying, increasing the prowess of the light pursuit sword by over 100 times. Right now, the mass of each slash of the light pursuit sword was 0, and it propagated through massless mediums like gravitons, gluons, and photons. Therefore, each slash was at light speed, leaving behind only pure destructive prowess. It could affect both the macroscopic and microscopic scales at the same time. Sensing the destructive prowess of the sword technique, Fang Xingjian withdrew the light pursuit sword intent abruptly into his body. Looking at the moon under his feet, Fang Xingjian let out a slight sigh. He had not expected that he would be able to raise the profoundness of the light pursuit sword even further this time around. He had integrated the 4 fundamental forces, gravity, electromagnetic, and strong interaction forces, into the light pursuit sword. Chapter 761. There is still a lot of profoundness in the light pursuit sword that could be researched. However, Fang Xingjian did not continue on. It was because he had already stayed in this parallel world for close to a month, and it was too long. Therefore, with a flash, Fang Xingjian moved out. Right now, his body had turned into sword light, completely relying on a massless medium to transmit his energy and information. This allowed him to turn his physical body into light and then move at light speed. This was a movement ability that was even stronger than Tier 2 Divine level experts who could move at akin to light speed. It was because he did not need to reassemble his physical body, and there was one less flaw when he did so. As his physical body turned into sword light, the omnipresent martial will suppression was also penetrated by him, unable to affect him at all. In the blink of an eye, Fang Xingjian returned to the front of the moon. All of the secret techniques were undamaged. Clearly, the people on Earth were intimidated by Fang Xingjian's prowess and did not wish to destroy this place. Simultaneously, Fang Xingjian once again turned his gaze toward the entire Earth. Right now, on Earth, the entire mortal world had been stirred up by the sword technique on the moon. It was as if everything was in a mess. Countless people were observing the moon, recording the sword technique, and cultivating it. More and more people started to believe in the existence of superpowers, and more extraordinary humans appeared in public, no longer bothering to hide their abilities. Although most governments were still doing their best to hide the existence of superpowers, it was clearly useless. It was because no matter how they tried to hide it, it was impossible for them to hide the bright moon above their heads. As long as the moon was still around, the entire world would not be able to turn back. However, for ordinary people to achieve success in their cultivation, they still needed time. In comparison, at least within a short period of time, Fang Xingjian's reincarnation sword technique brought about a greater change to extraordinary humans. Countless extraordinary humans experienced changes in their bodies and systems on the first day they started cultivating. As they cultivated, the number of physical particles in their bodies increased, and the changes to their powers and systems were also tremendous. Almost all extraordinary humans started to gradually get closer to the night system. It could be foreseen that as everyone cultivated, the entire Earth would gradually become a world similar to Miracle World. As for the Crimson Alliance and the Radiant Congress, they were doing their best to recruit extraordinary humans. They worked hard to recruit more and stronger extraordinary humans under them and manage them to prevent any accidents from happening. Of course, due to Fang Xingjian's existence, there were also many extraordinary humans who joined the Douglas family, causing the Douglas family to become an extraordinary organization that was only second to the Crimson Alliance and the Radiant Congress. However, Fang Xingjian could no longer be bothered with these things. The future of this world could not depend on him. It could only depend on themselves. As the direction of the world's future history changed, Fang Xingjian also gradually sensed the call of Miracle World. This meant that this world was also heading in the direction of Miracle World. The two worlds from different timelines would be getting closer and closer until they reached the same endpoint at the end of the universe. At the next moment, a strong attraction force was felt. It was the summoning of Miracle World's 9-tiered heavens. With a flash of light, Fang Xingjian disappeared completely, leaving this parallel world. On this return journey, Fang Xingjian seemed to be able to see two rivers that had originally been developing in different directions. However, because of the shovel he had used, one of the rivers had diverged, changing into a small stream that flowed in the direction of the other river. Fang Xingjian followed the stream and crossed over, returning to the original Miracle World. Are these the changes to the timelines? It was an extremely majestic and magnificent scene. Amidst the surging great river, Fang Xingjian seemed to be able to see all the changes in the entire world. In each instant, he seemed to be able to see all the information and energy of the entire world in each section of the river. They flowed over from an unknown distance away, crossing void space, and flowed to an unknown distance away. Regardless of whether it was Fang Xingjian, Miracle World, the entire planet, or even the entire galaxy, all of them appeared extremely insignificant before this timeline. A hint of comprehension suddenly appeared in Fang Xingjian's mind. Each section of the long river of time that flowed from one end to the other might be the size of the entire universe. This was the history of the entire universe, forming the long river of time before him. Fang Xingjian felt that his body was floating above the long river of time, and the profoundness between the past, present, and future flowed in his heart. Countless pieces of knowledge seemed to gush into his mind, giving him an indescribable comprehension. Fang Xingjian was extremely familiar with this feeling. It was the feeling of sudden inspiration. At this moment, Fang Xingjian had finally reached Tier 4 of the divine level and possessed the power of sudden inspiration. By the time Fang Xingjian regained his senses, he had already returned to the sky above Miracle World. The third tier of the 9-tiered heavens had also disappeared. Fang Xingjian looked at his stats window. The attributes on it had become: Name, Fang Xingjian. Age, 19. Occupation, Eternal Sword Senior Level, 33 Strength, 726 Agility, 724 Reaction, 629 Endurance, 610 Flexibility, 609 Martial Will, 2000 Techniques, sword prowess, sword force. Level 50, celestial eradication, sword formation. Level 50, celestial eradication, sword technique. After stepping into level 33, his attributes had gone through another transformation, and his abilities could be said to have improved tremendously. It's a pity that time is too tight, and I can't stay longer to understand the evolution process of the system. Fang Xingjian let out a slight sigh. He felt that if he could understand the true profoundness of the Knight system, he would definitely be able to gain unimaginable benefits. But it's also good that I'm back in Miracle World. Everyone here has a Knight system, and it's just nice for me to experiment. Fang Xingjian gave it some thought before returning to the Great Western Region Regional Academy. He then retrieved his Abyss and Thunder Calamity longswords. With this, he would once again be able to unleash the full power of the Celestial Eradication sword formation. Moreover, his Light Pursuit sword technique had improved once again. He drew out a white bone longsword and channeled his Infiltrating Void sword intense into it. Fang Xingjian could sense that with the channeling of his sword intense, his Celestial Eradication sword formation had incorporated the changes of strong interaction forces. It started to take effect on the microscopic scale, and its wondrous effects and prowess increased once again. After completing the new sword formation, I'll perform the sudden inspiration and search for Lilia's location. Fang Xingjian had not forgotten the reason why he had strived for Tier 4 of the Divine level. Since he was unable to locate Lilia with the sudden inspiration brought about by the 10th level of the Mystical Prince, he would comprehend the sudden inspiration sensing ability once again to search for Lilia's traces. Lilia had been taken away by the Purple Robe Mages, and they had said that they wanted to take Lilia in as their disciple. It did not seem like they had any intention of harming her. However, the other party was a member of the Mage Association after all. How could Fang Xingjian tolerate them taking Lilia away so casually? Chapter 762. 3 hours later, the white bone short sword, which had been imbued with a Light Pursuit sword intent, soared into the air. In that instant, sword light flashed and split into a myriad of swords, rising up from the ground with a brilliant glow. At the next moment, the Abyss, the Thunder Calamity, and another white bone short sword also rose up. The 4 divine swords shone upon each other, and the Celestial Eradication sword formation instantly encompassed a range of 10,000 meters. Hints of the profoundness of gravity, electromagnetism, and strong force passed through it. Sword light traversed the microscopic and macroscopic scales, exuding all sorts of mysterious and abnormal prowess. With this, Fang Xingjian's sword arts improved tremendously once again, and the prowess of his Celestial Eradication sword formation surpassed its limits once again, reaching a new height. Withdrawing the sword formation, Fang Xingjian's gaze flashed with layers of killing intent. Next, I'll have to find Lilia. At the thought of this, Fang Xingjian closed his eyes, and his heart gradually turned into nothingness. He focused purely on the direction in his heart, activating his sudden inspiration's senses at full power. Previously, although Fang Xingjian had searched for Lilia with his sudden inspiration's full power, he had not been able to find any traces of her. This time around, other than the senses of the 10th level of the Mystical Prince, there was also a profoundness of the past, present, and future flowing into Fang Xingjian's heart. The past events flashed past Fang Xingjian's eyes one after another. It was as if they had formed a long river of time, flowing in an unknown direction. A short moment later, Fang Xingjian opened his eyes, exuding an intense killing intent. Not around? In the past, Fang Xingjian had only been at the 10th level of the Mystical Prince, so he had not been able to sense Lilia at all. Now, with his cultivation, Fang Xingjian was still unable to sense Lilia's location. However, he sensed another piece of information. Lilia was no longer in this universe. There's a limit to the sudden inspiration's senses. Fang Xingjian then thought of the vast and boundless timeline that he had seen. The sudden inspiration can only sense the timeline I'm in. Lilia is no longer in this timeline. Therefore, My sudden inspiration is unable to sense her existence." At the thought of this, Feng Xingjian frowned. He had not expected that the purple robe mages would have a way to leave this timeline and reach other parallel worlds. If that was the case, it would be difficult to find Lilia. However, he had previously heard that the purple robe mage was also going to participate in the evil god summoning ritual this time around. Perhaps this was the best opportunity to find Lilia. The dusky sky. In a broken modern city, everywhere was covered in a purple fungal carpet, and soon, a group of insects flew across the sky. At the very center of the city was a building that was more than 100 stories tall. The entire building was covered in purple mucus. From time to time, tiger-sized bugs could be seen crawling in and out of the building's surface. The entire building looked like a bug nest. At the highest level of the bug nest, a young lady dressed in white clothes sat on the ground. Before her were many huge, transparent spheres, and in each sphere was a naked man. These spheres seemed to have grown out from the purple fungal carpet, as if they had grown out from a fruit tree. Moreover, these men had strong physiques and handsome appearances. They emitted powerful waves of power from their bodies, and any one of them was an existence that was favored by the heavens. Behind the young lady dressed in white clothes, a young lady dressed in purple clothes slowly squatted down. She slowly reached out her hands and hugged the young lady dressed in white clothes. The young lady dressed in purple clothes stuck out her scarlet tongue and licked the young lady dressed in white clothes' earlobe. Seeing that the young lady dressed in white clothes could not help but shiver, the young lady dressed in purple clothes said softly, "What's wrong, Lilia? Do you not like any of these men?" The person standing at the top of the bug nest was Lilia, who had been abducted. Right now, she was not wearing any makeup. Her face was thin, and there were no ripples in her eyes. On the other hand, the young lady who had appeared behind her gave off a feeling of perfection. Regardless of whether it was the size of her eyes, the size of her nose, the position of her mouth, or even her hands, legs, chest, and waist measurements, they all gave off an inhuman feeling of perfection. A little bit bigger would be more, and a little bit smaller would be less. The woman wore a long robe, and her eyes emitted a faint purple glow, giving off an endless sense of mystery. Hearing the young lady dressed in purple clothes question, Lilia's countenance turned cold, and her gaze turned increasingly icy. "I don't like it." The purple-robed girl licked Lilia's cheek with her tongue and sighed. "Lilia, I've given you supreme power, boundless hope, boundless wealth, and a man of your choosing. What else do you want?" With that, she threw a glance at the men who were encompassed in the transparent spheres and said, "Aren't they good? Regardless of whether it's their appearance, figure, or talent, I've carefully adjusted them to satisfy your preferences in all aspects." Lilia said calmly, "I don't like it." Lilia, with a sigh, the young lady dressed in purple clothes turned into a cloud of fog and appeared right before Lilia from behind. She faced Lilia, nose to nose, and her eyes looked straight into Lilia's. With an explosive bang, all the spheres instantly collapsed, turning into a pool of blood along with the men within them. They were gradually absorbed back into the purple creep. "Then, tell me, what on earth do you like?" The young lady dressed in purple clothes' palm brushed past Lilia's face gently, as if she was stroking a precious piece of porcelain. Lilia looked at her, but did not say a word. The young lady dressed in purple clothes hugged Lilia's head as if she was hugging a precious treasure. She sighed and said, "Purple faction black magic represents the extreme number of reproduction, or love. The extreme of reproduction is the power of love. As long as there's love, it can change the future of any two living creatures at any time, any place. And I'm also the only mage king in the history of the purple mage kings who has mastered love." As she spoke, an extremely sorrowful atmosphere was emitted from her body. The grief in her eyes seemed to want to drag the entire world into an abyss. Even Lilia could not help but be moved at the sight of this scene. Accompanied by the purple mage king's grief, the entire city suddenly trembled. Countless bugs broke out from the ground and let out sorrowful cries as they looked toward the sky. A myriad of bugs let out all sorts of cries, and the grief and agony in their cries made the entire mortal world seem as if it had turned into a ghost city. The Purple Mage King continued with a sorrowful expression. You have the potential to inherit my powers. No matter what, I'll definitely let you find what you like. As she said this, a purple glow flashed in her eyes. Looking at that purple glow, Lilia could not help but say, I. The Purple Mage King lifted Lilia's chin, looked at her with anticipation, and said, Go on. I. A hint of haziness flashed in Lilia's eyes. I want. Feng Xingjian, as you wish. My child. Chapter 763. After discovering that his sudden inspiration was unable to find Lilia's location, Feng Xingjian decided to place his target on the evil god's descent. Since purple robe mages were also involved, he would naturally be able to track them during the ritual and find traces of Lilia. The next day, the news of Feng Xingjian coming out of seclusion spread throughout the entire academy. Listening to Zhou Xingwen's report, Feng Xingjian found out about the situation in the Great Western region during the time he had been away. Just as Feng Xingjian had been cultivating in seclusion, striving for the nine-tiered heavens, a mysterious divine-level expert had infiltrated the academy. However, the academy was no longer the same as before. Almost all the core members had the reinforcements from the 9th level of the Mystical Prince, and there were also 3 divine-level experts, the 4th Prince, Prince Philip, and Tyrant, keeping watch. Not only had they chased away the infiltrator, but they had also dealt him with serious injuries. Other than them, the governor and the head of department had all reached 3 tiers of demigod. Even Zhou Xingwen, Robert, Rhoda, Ferdinand, and the others had all become level 29 conferred knights with the help of the 9th level of the Mystical Prince. The Academy's abilities were at the top, and it had become a top-notch influence in the Empire. In the Xingwu region, there were also unknown mages who attempted to infiltrate, but were fended off by the 3 divine-level experts, Lan Yu, Blue Sacred Moonlight, and the Astral Ancestor. After being suppressed by Feng Xingjian previously, the Northern Ice region had been forged into an iron bucket by the Holy Light Clan. Under the lead of the Holy Light Clan's head, Jacob, everyone was loyal to Feng Xingjian. With that, out of the Empire's 8 regions, the Great Western region, the Northern Ice region, and the Xingwu region were all under the control of the Second Prince's faction, or rather, Feng Xingjian. Zhou Xingwen stood before Feng Xingjian and said, Xingjian, the spies that the Second Prince left behind in the palace have all been eliminated. The entire palace is now controlled by batches of mysterious experts, and there are even unfamiliar divine-level experts entering and leaving the place. Feng Xingjian's brows twitched. Unfamiliar divine-level experts. That's right, Zhou Xingwen said. All the major powers in the world have never given up on infiltrating the imperial palace. All kinds of attendants and maids have been bribed. As the center of the world, the imperial palace would always be a place of concern for all the influences and organizations in the world. Whether it was Prince Philip, the 4th Prince, the 2nd Prince, or the other top-notch influences, they would definitely have their own eyes and ears in the imperial palace. It was just that the strength and location of their eyes and ears were different. This kind of thing was also a situation that would always happen despite the prohibition of every dynasty. Zhou Xingwen continued to say, however, ever since His Majesty reformed the manpower in the palace over a month ago, all the spies from all the influences have been eliminated. Instead, a large number of mysterious experts have appeared. There were even demigods from the Steel Lion Kingdom who tried to sneak in from the northern plains. However, they were killed on the spot by the guards. Feng Xingjian nodded as the information about Shang appeared in his mind. Now that he had both the Mystical Prince and the sudden inspiration of a Tier 4 divine-level expert, his guesses were getting increasingly accurate. Although he could not give a concrete reason, he could guess that this matter must have something to do with Shang. He had a feeling of confidence in the past and future. Zhou Xingwen continued, this evil god summoning ritual isn't just the Krieg royal family. Even the gold, red, black, and purple faction mages are all present. The implications are so great that it can change the tides of history. Other than the holy sea of truth, there's probably no one else who can change the fact that this matter is bound to happen. Fang Xingjian nodded. Make some preparations. I'm going to the imperial capital. Zhou Xingwen was taken aback and quickly tried to persuade him. Xingjian, I know that your sword arts are unrivaled in the world, but the waters in the imperial capital are unimaginably deep. It's not just that Alexander is a tier 5 divine level expert. Each of the gold, red, black, and purple mage kings is stronger than Alexander. There's also the mysterious expert who has suddenly appeared in the palace. As the Mage Association's archenemy for 10 million years, the Holy Sea of Truth will definitely not sit by and watch as the evil god descends. This is like a huge vortex, and those who are involved will be crushed into pieces. Why don't we just sit by and watch from the sidelines? Fang Xingjian shook his head. How could he not know that the evil god summoning ritual had already turned into a huge storm that involved the ancient path of hell, Shang, the Mage Association, and the Holy Sea of Truth? Even the Steel Lion Kingdom in the north and the Sand Country in the east would not sit by and watch. It was possible that they would be waiting to take advantage of the situation. Even with Fang Xingjian's current celestial eradication sword formation and his cultivation at tier 4 of the divine level, he would still be in danger of dying in the storm. However, Lilia's traces were within it. Moreover, his sudden inspiration's reaction also told him that the evil god summoning ritual this time around had a wide range of implications. Even if he were to hide, he would not be able to avoid it. Just as Fang Xingjian and Zhou Xingwen were discussing things, Head of Department James suddenly barged in. James's lifespan was nearing its end, but he had been unable to attain a breakthrough after much effort. He looked like he was getting old. However, with the reinforcement from the 9 levels of the Mystical Prince and the endless wealth and resources provided by Fang Xingjian, he had reached 3 tiers of perfection in the demigod realm. Not only had his lifespan increased once again, but his black hair had also grown out and his skin was taut. He no longer looked old, and he had regained the appearance he had when he was in his middle age. However, right now, his countenance was grim, and there were flames of fury flashing in his eyes. Seeing James in such a state, Fang Xingjian asked, "What's wrong, Head of Department?" James said, "Xingjian, I'm going to make a trip to the imperial capital. With you holding down the fort in the Great Western region, I'm already at ease." Fang Xingjian asked puzzledly, "Why are you going to the imperial capital?" To be honest, the imperial capital is filled with danger right now. It's unfathomable, and experts from all over have gathered there. Even if I were to head there, I wouldn't have complete confidence. If you were to head there with your current abilities, James let out a bitter laugh. How could he not know how dangerous the imperial capital was right now? However, he had no reason not to go. He said, "The second prince's only descendant is left in the imperial capital, but he's being bullied and his life is in danger. I have no choice but to go." It turned out that the second prince's only son had been staying in the imperial capital all this while. A few days ago, he had sent a message asking for help from the Great Western region. As a veteran of the second prince's faction, James naturally could not sit by and watch as the young master fell into danger. However, he also knew that the imperial capital was like a huge vortex right now. Once he was swept into it, he would be in danger of dying horribly. Therefore, he said, "Xingjian, the imperial capital is filled with danger right now. This time around, I'll go alone and think of a way to deal with the situation. It's best if you don't take the risk. Right now, you're a thorn in His Majesty's flesh. Once you head over, it'll be too dangerous. You might as well stay in the Great Western region and wait for the outcome of this matter." Fang Xingjian stood up, walked up to James, and said, "Head of Department, I owe the second prince a favor. Although his whereabouts are currently unknown, how can I watch as his son is humiliated?" Although Fang Xingjian had almost no emotions, he still knew some principles of human relations. Moreover, he had always treated them as the code of conduct in order to prevent himself from losing control and doing whatever he wanted. He looked at James seriously and said, "I'm destined to head to the imperial capital for the evil god ritual this time around. Leave the matter with the second prince to me. You should take this opportunity to stay in the Great Western region. With your current cultivation and the effects of the 10th level of the mystical prince, you'll probably be able to step into the divine level soon. By then, you'll be of even greater help to us. Under Feng Xingjian's persuasion, James finally agreed to this request. In order to head to the imperial capital in a stronger state, Feng Xingjian first made a trip to Wang Xiaoyan's and Feng Qian's place to take a look at the situation of the Panwu Heavenly Raimant's modification of the Divine Sword. Chapter 764. With a flash, Feng Xingjian arrived at the workshop where Wang Xiaoyan and Feng Qian were. Right now, the workshop was completely different from before. The walls, floor, and ceiling were all pure white, and many experiment tables were placed there in an orderly manner. It looked just like a top-notch laboratory in modern society. However, everything was still controlled by the Knight's powers, using ether particles as the source of all energy. Moreover, there were many more Knight apprentices in the laboratory. From the way they were dressed, it seemed that they were all people from Earth. Almost at the moment Feng Xingjian appeared, he attracted everyone's attention. Feng Qian was the only one who rushed over and started to report on the divine weapon situation. As you can see, we've brought in many scientists from Earth to research the integration of scientific theories and the Knight system. However, the progress is too slow. This is especially so since our world only has a superficial understanding of strong and weak forces. It's far too difficult to apply them to the forging of a divine weapon. As Feng Qian spoke, a troubled expression appeared on her face. Feng Xingjian nodded to indicate that he understood. It was true that ordinary people did not have the ability to observe the microscopic world, and the research in this area was far too slow. Feng Qian continued, "Moreover, the Panwu Heavenly Raiment is too sturdy, and it's hard to remodel it with ordinary means. In order to modify it into a divine sword, we're still trying to make use of the powers of the few divine-level experts in the Academy." Feng Xingjian nodded. He understood how sturdy the Panwu Heavenly Raiment was. However, he had obtained a hint of the profoundness of strong and weak forces from the parallel Earth. Coupled with his understanding of electromagnetic forces and gravity, he could perfectly cover the composition of physical structures. Right now, he could offer them up for them to forge a divine weapon. Therefore, with a tap of Feng Xingjian's finger, all sorts of understandings regarding electromagnetic forces, gravity, and strong forces were transmitted into Feng Qian's mind. A few minutes later, when Feng Xingjian retracted his finger, Feng Qian's eyes were filled with excitement. Feng Qian said in astonishment, "Unbelievable! To think that your comprehension of the world has reached such a level?" Feng Xingjian said, "After stepping into the divine level, I'll be able to delve deeper into the microscopic world. Right now, I can already reach the smallest scale of space. If I delve deeper, it'll be the 10th-dimensional world where time and space are one. This will naturally be very helpful for the exploration of the microscopic world." However, Feng Qian was already immersed in the knowledge that Feng Xingjian had given her. This is great. These things are really useful. This should be the true use of divine-level experts. If all the divine-level experts were to help us in our research, then within a few years, we would be able to push our current technology forward by several hundred or even several thousand years. Feng Xingjian nodded, knowing that Feng Qian was right. A divine-level expert was equivalent to a country. Regardless of whether it was their battle prowess, productivity, or research and exploration abilities, they far surpassed a population of several million, tens of millions, or even hundreds of millions. However, it was impossible for them to help ordinary people develop, because they needed to focus on their own cultivation and combat. A short moment later, Feng Qian regained her senses and said confidently to Feng Xingjian, "With the help of your theories and the assistance of the other divine-level experts in the Academy, the modifications to the Panwu Heavenly Raiment will probably be completed very soon. Not only that, we'll also attempt to combine technology with ether particles. Once we succeed, we'll be able to create many powerful weapons. Artificial gravity, curvature engines, and even quantum transmission will all be possible. Fang Xingjian said, I'm going to the imperial capital. If the modifications to the Panwu heavenly raiment are completed, then send the divine sword to the imperial capital. You're going to the imperial capital? Before Fang Qian could recover from her astonishment, Fang Xingjian's body flashed and disappeared. Earlier on, he had already asked about the second prince's son situation. Right now, his body had turned into a light sword, mixed in with the sunlight, and instantly passed through countless mountains and rivers, arriving in the sky above the imperial capital. For a Tier 4 divine level expert like Fang Xingjian, the distance within the atmospheric layer was no longer a problem. Almost instantly, he arrived in the sky above the central region's imperial capital from the Great Western region. Looking at the massive city with several million people on the ground and the floating palaces in the sky that were like the legendary heavenly court, a hint of wariness flashed on Fang Xingjian's face. He took a step into the spatial gaps and darted toward the series of palaces on the ground. The Krieg royal family's palace was in the sky, and these palaces that floated in the sky day and night were extremely glorious and domineering. Just their existence alone was enough to calm the hearts of the people, showing how powerful the Krieg royal family was. However, this palace in the sky belonged to Alexander alone. Only he and his concubines were allowed to stay in it. As for the other members of the royal family, all of them had their own palaces in the cities on the ground. In the north of the capital, there was a palace that was slightly built. It was the palace that the second prince had left behind in the capital. There were many rumors related to the second prince circulating in the capital. One of the most important rumors was that the second prince did not seem to be interested in women. It was because the second prince had only married a single wife and had given birth to a prince. Over the years, the second prince did not pay much attention to his wife and son. As a result, the achievements of the second prince's son, Charlot, had always been the worst among the many princes in the royal family. Right now, in the bedroom in the palace, the Prince Charlot suddenly woke up from his sleep, sweating profusely. Looking at the familiar ceiling before him, he revealed a hint of perplexity. So, it was just a dream? No, that's not right. That's definitely not as simple as a dream. Charlot, who was only 14 years old, could not help but recall the contents of the dream. It was a very long and clear dream, and it was the situation from the present to the next 1 year. The experiences were very vivid in his mind, as if they were real. Did I foresee the future? Or did my future self reincarnate to the present? What on earth is going on? Sensing how clear the memories in his dream were, he could not help but scratch his groggy head. I remember that I was knocked unconscious by Kroll on the drill ground and then sent back. Kroll was the first prince's eldest son and the strongest prince among the third generation of the royal family. He was a frequent target of bullying and humiliation for Charlot. After that, it should be Maruto who came over to ask me about the situation. Thinking of Maruto, hints of hatred appeared on Charlot's face. It was this new butler who not only bullied his master, but he had also betrayed and toyed with Charlot many times, causing him to go through a lot of hardships. Just as Charlot thought of this, a bald, strong man dressed in golden armor walked in without any prior notice. He threw a cold glance at Charlot, who was lying on the bed, and said, "Is the prince all right? It's good that you're fine. There's still the monthly competition tomorrow. However, to think that the prince is injured. I've already applied for leave for the prince. Please have a good rest." Just as Maruto finished speaking, Charlot's mind was in a state of shock. It's exactly the same? To think that it's exactly the same as what I said in my dream? A gleam flashed in Charlot's eyes. I remember now. It's teacher. Teacher sent me back to turn the tables. I have been reborn. Chapter 765. After Maruto left, Charlot was still in a state of astonishment. Being reborn was such an unbelievable thing, and right now, he might be able to experience it. Have I really been reborn? Charlot's gaze suddenly narrowed, revealing a maturity that a 14-year-old young man would not have. If I've really been reborn, then Master is going to Just as he was thinking of this, a stream of sword light flashed in void space, and Feng Xingjian appeared before him. He's really here. After Maruto bullied and humiliated me, Master has come. It's really like this. At this moment, Charlot was extremely agitated. The memories of what had happened in the following year kept on flowing in his mind, and the many humiliations and vengeances he had felt were like bombs that were about to explode. Regardless of whether it was the royal family, the Mage Association, or the Holy See of Truth, all of them were his enemies. Even his grandfather, Alexander, viewed him as a mortal enemy and did not hesitate to launch multiple sneak attacks to kill him. Even his mother, his uncle, and many other relatives had died in the other party's hands. He could still remember the scene where his entire clan had been turned into dust by that one attack. Towards these people, Charlotte only had an indescribable hatred that could not be wiped out even if she wanted to. Feng Xingjian had always been the one who had saved his life. It was all because of his father's appreciation of Feng Xingjian. Charlot had always been hiding behind Feng Xingjian, watching as Feng Xingjian shielded him from the wind and rain. Not only that, he had also been taken in as a disciple by Feng Xingjian, imparted sword arts, and given a divine equipment. He now possessed powers that were unimaginable in the past. However, all of these had still been destroyed by Alexander and the others. Since I've really been reborn, I must change my life and Master's life. I must make all those people who bullied us pay the price. Opposite Charlot, Feng Xingjian frowned slightly. He could not understand why Charlot seemed to be so agitated. He merely asked calmly, "You know me?" Charlot's expression turned cold, and a myriad of thoughts flashed past his mind. He started to consider if he should tell Feng Xingjian about his rebirth. After all, this was risky. If Feng Xingjian didn't believe him, it would backfire on what he planned to do in the future. However, when he thought of his master's methods, talent, and temperament, Charlot's expression relaxed. He knew that being honest with his master was the best method. He was seen kneeling on the ground. "Master, please accept a bow from your disciple." Feng Xingjian frowned. His body flashed as he dodged Charlotte's bow. He appeared behind Charlotte and said, "Don't bow to me. In this world, there is no one worthy of being bowed to. I am no different from you in essence. Besides, I'm not your master." Charlotte smiled. This person's personality was exactly the same as in his memories. Thinking of this, his eyes flashed with gratitude. It's great to be able to be reborn. Charlot's expression froze as he said, "Master, what I'm going to say next might be very hard to imagine, but it's very likely to be the truth. Actually, I came from a year in the future. 1 year later, you sent me to this era to reverse the inevitable defeat of the future." Oh, a hint of astonishment flashed in Feng Xingjian's eyes. Clearly, even with his vast experience, he had not expected Charlot to say something like this. "Continue," Charlot said solemnly. "Master, not long after you arrived in the imperial capital, you took me in as your disciple and imparted your sword arts to me. However, regardless of whether it's Alexander, the 4 mage kings, or the many guardian kings from the Holy See of Truth, their powers are all unfathomable. In the 1 year after the evil god ritual, we were suppressed from all sides, and we were surrounded by enemies. Although Master has great talent and unparalleled sword arts, you weren't able to fend off all of them." Charlot's words were sincere, and his tone was filled with a hint of sincerity. After more than a year of experience, what made him feel the most was the feeling of being surrounded by enemies on all sides, densely packed with enemies. Even though Feng Xingjian had unparalleled sword arts, he was still unable to fend off the enemies that were densely packed together like a hornet's nest. Therefore, the first thing he wanted to do after his rebirth was to persuade Feng Xingjian to stop making enemies everywhere and to instead contact a certain influence. This way, with Feng Xingjian's sword arts cultivation, he would have sufficient time and space to cultivate. It would not be difficult for him to reach the pinnacle of the world in the future. This was the most important thing he had to do in order to avoid future tragedies. Hearing Charlot's persuasion, Feng Xingjian did not reply. Instead, he asked, How can I believe that what you're saying is true? Charlot said confidently, Master, the sword technique you created is called the Celestial Eradication Sword Technique, and the strongest move is called the Celestial Eradication Sword Formation, right? Fang Xingjian said calmly. This information can be found out in the Great Western Region's Regional Academy. It's not enough to be relied on. Hearing this, Charlot became even more confident. It was because he knew that he had not known about these things in the past. His understanding of Fang Xingjian's sword arts came from his memories 1 year later. Right now, he was 90% certain that he had been reborn. He continued, Then based on my original memories, Master, you'll help me participate in the royal family's monthly competition tomorrow, helping me defeat the other princes and clinch first place. I can predict tomorrow's arrangements and results right now. Monthly competition? Fang Xingjian asked. Charlot explained that the monthly competition referred to an assessment of the royal family. The Krieg royal family came from the ancient path of hell. Ever since it was established, they had never given up on the cultivation of the members of the royal family. The monthly competition was a monthly assessment for all the members of the royal family. There would be different rewards for those who obtained different rankings. It could be considered as a form of supervision for the members of the royal family in their cultivation. Fang Xingjian nodded. Then you'll participate in the monthly competition tomorrow. You can predict the results of the competition then. Of course, he would not believe such things so easily. He still needed more verification. All right. Charlot nodded in agreement. After all, the matter of his rebirth was of great importance. He had not expected Fang Xingjian to believe it so easily. Even now, he still felt that it was a little like a dream. The monthly competition tomorrow could be used to verify his memories. However, after he agreed, he reminded, but my right to participate in the competition should have been revoked by Marudo. This vile slave is taking advantage of my young age. Not only did he embezzle my estate, but he also made a report to the Knight Association today and helped me apply for leave. Fang Xingjian asked casually, Where did this Marudo come from? As he spoke, his marshal had already scanned through the entire Second Prince's palace. He said in slight astonishment, To think that this person is a divine-level expert. It was impossible for Fang Xingjian not to be astonished. To think that a divine-level expert had come to be Charlot's servant. When had the Krieg royal family become so extravagant? Chapter 766. Charlotte explained, This person was sent to me by Alexander a month ago. A month ago, a lot of unfamiliar experts suddenly appeared in the palace and were sent to various positions. Basically, every prince has one. Marudo, this evil slave, is the housekeeper in name, but in reality, he is monitoring me. Not only does he bully me because I am young, he embezzles my assets, and he even keeps me under house arrest in the manor. Thankfully, I sent my trusted subordinates to the Great Western region to seek help. Otherwise, I would probably be reared like pigs in the imperial capital for the rest of my life. At the mention of this, a hint of viciousness flashed in Charlot's eyes. I only found out later on that these experts who suddenly appeared came from an organization called Shang. There are many experts in this organization, and they have many divine-level experts. All of them are famous experts in history, and their leader, True Lord Qing Shan, is unfathomable. He'll be Master's strongest opponent from now on. Before I returned, he had already killed the Great Western Region's head of department, James, the governor, as well as Wang Xiaoyan and Fang Qian. He also snatched away many of Master's research results. In fact, when he joined forces with the Saint of the Holy Sea of Truth to attack you, he even snatched away one of your divine remains equipment longswords. Therefore, Master, you must not underestimate them. Fang Xingjian squinted his eyes when he heard the name Shang. This result matched up with what he guessed on a whim. He couldn't help but believe in the authenticity of Charlotte's words. As for the information about Shang, then send him in. I'll take care of him and verify what you said. Charlot's eyes lit up, and he could not wait any longer. He had long wanted to deal with Marudo, but he was only a first transition level 19 knight. How could he have the ability to do so? A moment later, Marudo, who was dressed in golden armor, walked towards the study. His expression was cold and indifferent. He was a little dissatisfied with true Lord Qingshan's arrangements. He was a Tier 3 divine level expert, the Dark Shadow Country's monarch from 3,000 years ago, an unparalleled expert who was known as the King of the Seas, the King of the Sky, and the King of the Earth. To think that he'd been sent here to keep an eye on a little kid. Of course, he would feel indignant. Not to mention Charlotte. Even Charlotte's father, the second prince, was nothing in his eyes. In the entire Krieg royal family, only Emperor Alexander and the Abyss Lord were significant figures to him. However, they had already given up on the second prince's faction. Naturally, Maruto would not pay much attention to them. However, true Lord Qingshan's prestige in Shang was getting stronger and stronger, and even he did not dare to disobey him. When the true monarch and the others join forces to destroy that Fang Xingjian, we won't have to worry about anything else. When the time comes, with Shang's potential, once he develops, he will be able to rival the Sorcerer Association and the Holy Sea of Truth. At the thought of his bright future, Maruto's breathing quickened. After a short while, Maruto could not be bothered to announce his arrival. He pushed open the door and entered Charlot's study. He swept his gaze across the study impudently, then looked straight at Charlot, who was behind the desk, and asked, "May I know what orders young master has for me?" Looking at Maruto's impudent actions, Charlot was infuriated and said coldly, "Evil slave, you took advantage of my youth and ignorance and spoiled my cultivation. Today, you even stopped me from participating in the royal family's monthly competition. Do you know your crimes?" Maruto looked straight at Charlot without any reservations and said, "Young master, you must be joking. Young master's cultivation talent isn't enough, and you've even been injured by Prince Kroll today. It's also because I want to take care of Prince's injuries that I'm not letting Prince participate in the monthly competition." Hearing Maruto's words, Charlot was so exasperated that he laughed instead. "All right, then what if I insist on participating?" Maruto said in a cold tone, "Young master's injuries are too serious. I won't let young master participate. Young master, you better stay in the residence and recuperate from your injuries." Charlot laughed out loud, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. "Maruto, turn around and use your dog eyes to see who that is." Maruto was slightly surprised. He had not sensed that there was someone behind him. Just then, Fang Xingjian, who had been hiding at the side and watching the show, finally walked out. Maruto's earlier reaction was not much different from what Charlot had said. Before Maruto could move, Fang Xingjian had already slapped his palm onto Maruto's body. Looking at Fang Xingjian, who had suddenly appeared, Maruto's countenance turned pale. "Fang Xingjian, why have you come?" Naturally, he knew Fang Xingjian. It was because he knew him that he knew how terrifying Fang Xingjian was. Fang Xingjian said calmly, "You're one of Shang's men?" The moment Maruto saw Fang Xingjian, he unleashed his full power. He did not want to attack, but wanted to escape. Under true Lord Qingshan's proclamation, he knew too well how terrifying Fang Xingjian was. He also knew that Fang Xingjian was definitely not someone he could go up against. Therefore, he chose to escape at the first instance. Brilliant golden light burst out from his body, and a strong martial will burst out crazily. However, Fang Xingjian's palm, which was pressing down on his shoulder, was like a piece of land. No matter how much he unleashed his full power, he was unable to move in the slightest. Fang Xingjian then flicked Maruto's forehead with his finger, and Maruto fell to the ground like a 3-year-old baby. All of the martial will in his body shattered, and he was unable to put up any resistance at all. Maruto looked at Fang Xingjian with a pale countenance, as if he had seen a ghost. "How is this possible? Even Alexander can forget about defeating me with a single move. How on earth did you do it?" Fang Xingjian said calmly, "1 month ago, when I fought against Alexander, it was at most a draw. However, I've already reached Tier 4 of the divine level, and defeating him is as easy as flipping my hand. Tell me, how many people does Shang have in the imperial capital? And where is true Lord Qingshan?" It had not been easy for him to capture Shang's men, so how could he possibly let them off or kill them easily? He could also verify the information that Charlot had given him. However, Maruto's countenance kept changing. Thinking that Fang Xingjian was not asking about any secrets, he finally said after a long while, "There are a total of 52 people left behind in the imperial capital. 8 of them are divine-level experts, and the strongest are me and another person. We're both at Tier 3 of the divine level. As for where true Lord Qingshan is, I have no idea either. To think that there are 8 divine-level experts." Hearing Maruto's words, Fang Xingjian was also surprised. Shang's abilities were truly astonishing. Although these 8 people were not a threat to him, if they were used elsewhere, they would be able to create a storm and cause great losses. However, how on earth did so many divine-level experts come about? Fang Xingjian knew all too well how difficult it was for a divine-level expert to advance. Even during the era of the world's metamorphosis, there were only several tens of divine-level experts across the entire world. Even though there were so many people under Fang Xingjian who possessed the 9th level of the mystical prince, none of them had been able to advance to the divine level. Unless it was really as Charlot had said, that these people were experts from the previous dynasties. Chapter 767. Following that, under Fang Xingjian's interrogation, Maruto confessed everything honestly, which was contrary to his strong appearance. Fang Xingjian finally understood Shang's background. It was true that it was formed from countless experts from different dynasties. It had received the memories and emotions of those experts, and then revived through the relic that true Lord Qingshan had found. Among them, there was no lack of great experts who had been at Tier 5 or even 6 of the divine level when they had been alive. True Lord Qingshan himself had come from the era before the first onslaught. Hearing this, Fang Xingjian's heart stirred. Before the first onslaught? Then is the era when true Lord Qingshan was born in the parallel world that I went to when I cleared the 9-tiered heavens? Like the earth that possessed extraordinary powers previously? No matter what, true Lord Qingshan's abilities were not to be underestimated. Now that Fang Xingjian knew about this, he would naturally be even more guarded against him. Charlot's words also seemed to have more credibility. However, he did not alert the enemy immediately and deal with the other members of Shang. It was because they did not know where true Lord Qingshan was. Fang Xingjian decided to let Charlot participate in the monthly competition the next day to see if his rebirth was real. If it's real, that means that 1 year later, I'll already have the ability to interfere with the timeline. And if I still fail under such circumstances and have to send Charlot back, how strong will my enemies be? Fang Xingjian's eyes narrowed slightly, and a stream of sword intent pierced through Maruto's forehead, slashing into his consciousness and instantly knocking him out. Maruto was still of use for now, but he could not allow him to move freely. Therefore, Fang Xingjian knocked him out and placed him in the second prince's palace. All right, send someone to register for the monthly competition tomorrow. I'll go with you to take a look. Fang Xingjian threw a glance toward Charlot and said, "As for tonight, tell me about your memories for the next 1 year." Charlot had the same thoughts as well. Even if he had the memories of the next year, it would be impossible for him to turn the tables on his own. Only Fang Xingjian would have a chance. He was very clear about how powerful his master was. It was a terrifying ability to go up against the world single-handedly. Ever since he was reborn, he had been hell-bent on cozying up to Fang Xingjian. Fortunately, Fang Xingjian was as reliable as he remembered. He immediately told him everything that would happen in the coming year. According to Charlot, although the Holy Sea of Truth had sent people to stop the evil god ritual, they still failed. The ritual was a success, and the evil god's clone descended. It was then jointly killed by the Krieg royal family, the Mage Association, the Holy Sea of Truth, and Fang Xingjian. Next, the evil god left behind the evil god's heart and the evil god's brain, which contained the evil god's power and knowledge respectively. As everyone fought over them, the 4 great mage kings, the Holy Sea of Truth, and Fang Xingjian suffered from injuries, allowing the Krieg royal family to take advantage of the situation. All the benefits were reaped by Alexander and the Abyss Lord. The two of them obtained the evil god's heart and the evil god's brain respectively, possessing a portion of the evil god's power and knowledge. Their abilities soared, and they then borrowed the evil god's prowess to successfully subdue the four great mage kings. Fang Xingjian then had to struggle to survive in the gaps between Alexander, the Holy See of Truth, and Shang. The entire Great Western Region Regional Academy was personally wiped out by Alexander and true Lord Qingshan. Tyrant was absorbed by Alexander's evil god's heart. The fourth prince's will was crushed by true Lord Qingshan. Prince Philip was completely refined by the Abyss Lord. Lan Yu was taken in as Alexander's consort. The blue sacred moonlight surrendered. The astral ancestor was nowhere to be found. And the Holy Light clan's head, Jacob, was stripped of his intelligence and turned into a puppet. All of the divine level experts under Fang Xingjian were suppressed. Before Charlot returned, the four divine swords in Fang Xingjian's hands had been snatched away by Alexander, the church's saint, true Lord Qingshan, and the Black Mage King. Fang Xingjian was then chased by many experts for 10,000 lis and even suffered from serious injuries. Before he died, he sent Charlot back. As for how he had sent Charlot back, even Charlot had no idea. Charlot looked at Fang Xingjian and said, "Master, this time around, we mustn't let the Krieg royal family get their hands on the evil god's heart and the evil god's brain. Alexander's feud with you is as deep as the ocean, and after he gains power, he'll definitely not let you off. True Lord Qingshan is also staring at us like a mad dog. For now, we should think of a way to join forces with the Mage Association's four great mage kings, especially the red-robed and purple-robed mages. They don't have any irreconcilable grudges with us. If we can join forces, we'll be able to get a place for ourselves in the future." Fang Xingjian did not give a clear answer to Charlot's words. He merely remembered what Charlot had said, and then hid in Charlot's body the next day, accompanying him to participate in the monthly competition. In this examination that many members of the royal family participated in, the many matches were just as Charlot had said. All the results were almost exactly as Charlot had said. Fang Xingjian had also attacked across space, helping Charlot to win the monthly competition. Seeing that everything was exactly the same as in his memories, Charlot was even more certain that he had really been reborn. "Master, the crux is tonight. In your previous life, you were too confident. When you snuck into the palace tonight, you were besieged by the four great experts: Alexander, the Abyss Lord, the Black Mage King, and the Red Mage King. Then true Lord Qingshan took the opportunity to sneak an attack on you and injured you. As a result, you weren't able to achieve full success in the evil god ritual and didn't get any benefits." Fang Xingjian looked in the direction of the palace in the sky and said, "This means that if I head to the palace tonight, I'll be able to encounter the four great experts and true Lord Qingshan." "That's right." Looking at Fang Xingjian's expression, Charlot could not help but say, "Master, you can't possibly still be going, right?" Fang Xingjian said calmly, "There'll be a battle between me and them eventually. Moreover, if everything is really as you said and I find out about it in advance, this might also be a chance for me to kill true Lord Qingshan and join forces with the Mage Kings." "Kill true Lord Qingshan?" Charlot said in surprise. Fang Xingjian did not say a word. With a flash, he disappeared, leaving behind the nervous Charlot. Fang Xingjian turned into a stream of sword light, darting through the spatial gaps. Not only could it not be seen from the outside, but there were also no restrictions that could stop him from passing through after he took on the light form. He went deep into the palace. This was the latest development of the light pursuit sword intent, the ability to turn one's physical body into light, and it was what he was relying on to sneak into the palace at night. If he were to be ambushed by a divine level expert at light speed while he was not in light form, it was true that he might be injured. However, as long as he was careful in advance and did not get ambushed, Fang Xingjian was confident that he would be able to escape unscathed from the five great experts and even deal true Lord Qingshan serious injuries instead. Moreover, true Lord Qingshan might really have come from the era before the first onslaught. At the thought of this, a strange gleam flashed in Feng Xingjian's eyes. Chapter 768. The Krieg royal family's palace was located in the sky of the imperial capital. The city was made of gold, and the ground was covered with white clouds. It was just like the legendary divine realm or heavenly realm. Right now, there were countless experts guarding the palace. There were over 100 second transition knights, over 10 demigods, and 2 divine-level experts sent from Shang to lead the Forbidden Army. The entire palace could be said to be as safe as an iron bucket. In the depths of the palace, a huge golden palace stood in the sky. The palace was 10 meters tall and over 1,000 meters in length and width. The palace's ground, walls, pillars, and ceiling were all made of gold. There were also engravings of all sorts of beasts, fishes, birds, flowers, plants, people, dragons, snakes, and many other things. It was as if the entire world was included in the palace, giving off a majestic feeling. Right now, in the palace, the ruler of the empire and the strongest expert of the Krieg royal family, Alexander, sat alone on the throne in the center of the palace. He wore yellow robes and wore a solemn expression. His back was straight like a javelin, and his broad shoulders seemed as if they were going to hold up the entire sky. Behind this empire's ruler, the ancient path of hell's sect master, one of the empire's 10 great divine-level experts, the Abyss Lord, stood with his eyes lowered. His entire person was encompassed in darkness, as if he had become pure darkness. Alexander was as eye-catching as the sun, forever emitting his own light and heat, announcing his existence and his prestige to the entire world. The Abyss Lord was like the shadow behind the sun, forever hiding his brilliance. However, he used the darkness to bring out the sun's light and heat, wiping out all opposing powers in the darkness. The fact that he was able to remain in darkness under the sun's illumination showed how powerful he was. This pair of brothers, a ruler and a subject, just by standing there, they exuded an indescribable tacit understanding. It was as if they had become one. Below Alexander and the Abyss Lord stood 2 other people. The person in the lead wore black robes and had a head of white hair. He was so thin and weak that he looked like a skeleton, making one wonder if he was a mummy that would collapse with a single blow. However, no one present dared to look down on this old man. It was because he was the Black Mage King, the strongest expert among the black-robed mages who had dominated the world for over 100 years and led the Mage Association for several decades. When he had made a name for himself and fought against the guardian kings and saints of the Holy See of Truth, the other people present had probably not even been born yet. Moreover, ever since the world's metamorphosis, the Black Mage King had never really made a move personally. Therefore, no one knew how powerful this top-notch expert, who had dominated the world in the past, had become after the world's metamorphosis. They also knew how terrifying the power contained in that skinny and weak body of his contained. Behind the Black Mage King was a strange person with a height of close to 3 meters. The reason why it was called a strange person was that not only was this person over 3 meters tall, but he also had 2 long horns on his head. His entire body was encompassed by a layer of grayish-white stratum corneum, exuding an evil glow like that of a devil. There was also a tail that was over 2 meters long behind the strange person. It kept on swaying and lashing at the air, releasing crackling sounds. He looked very similar to Feng Xingqian, who cultivated red faction black magic. However, he exuded an even more brutal, and evil aura, giving off a feeling that he was completely inhuman. The arrogance in his gaze caused Alexander and the Abyss Lord, who were both on the stage, to feel uncomfortable looking at him. This strange person was the strongest expert who cultivated the red faction black magic. His appearance, which was extremely close to that of the red evil god, was the Red Mage King of the 4 Mage Kings. It was said that not only did this person have extraordinary talent and great strength, But he was also born with a hint of cruelty that did not seem to be human. When he was only 5 years old, he had killed all his parents and brothers. Thereafter, he lived alone in the mountains and wilderness, living like a tiger and a wolf. Without going through any cultivation, he had the ability to fight against a first transition knight. Thereafter, he was subdued by the Black Mage King and tested to have the ability to cultivate Red Faction black magic. He then became the previous Red Mage King's personal disciple. This cultivation could be said to be unstoppable. The bestial nature, cruelty, and craftiness hidden in his body were too compatible. Within a short few years, he improved by leaps and bounds, growing horns, sharp claws, a layer of skin, and a tail. His physical body kept on evolving towards an inhuman state. As his physical body changed, his personality, which had been filled with bestial nature, also changed rapidly, becoming increasingly brutal and cold-blooded. It was said that when this Red Mage King reached the second year of his cultivation, he gave up on all human food and hunted for food daily, eating it raw. All sorts of ferocious beasts, such as cows, sheep, horses, and snakes, were not able to escape his attempts. This caused the wild nature in him to become increasingly stronger. The changes in his personality led to the improvement of his cultivation, causing his physical body to become increasingly inhuman. The changes to his physical body further stimulated his personality, causing him to become increasingly like the legendary Red Evil God. This continued until 50 years ago when a large number of people went missing and dismembered corpses were discovered in the Mage Association's territory. From the start, the association's upper echelon suspected the gray-robed mages, who loved to conduct human experiments and sacrifice. However, the previous Red Mage King unintentionally discovered that it was the disciple he was the proudest of who had done these things. After this disciple of his had tried to engulf countless ferocious beasts, he finally set his sights on humans. Why do you want to eat humans? I was curious at the start. After tasting so many things, I just wanted to try out what human flesh tastes like. Those are humans. They're humans. Even ferocious beasts know not to eat their own kind. Is that so? Many animals will eat their young. All animals in the world can eat humans. So why can't humans? Is there anything special about you guys? The taste, the difficulty of capturing them, and the expressions they have before they die are no different from other animals. Evil creature, I'm going to clean up the sect today. A great battle was suppressed by the Black Mage King and became the Mage Association's greatest secret. At the very least, only a few people knew about it. However, what took everyone by surprise was that the previous Red Mage King had been defeated and more than half of his body parts had been eaten. Thereafter, the Black Mage King had forcefully protected this person and even pushed the blame for the dismembered corpses and missing persons cases to the gray-robed mages. This had a great impact on the chaos in the Serene Shrine for the next 20 years. For so many years, the Red Mage King had been placed under house arrest in the Mage Tower. The Red and Black faction mages had always been led by the Black Mage King himself. It was only during the Evil God ritual this time around that the Black Mage King finally released this true demon. Chapter 769. The Red Mage King looked at Alexander and the Abyss Lord with a cold expression. The brutality and cold-bloodedness in his gaze made one feel as if he was not looking at the king and the Path of Hell's sect master, but a dish on a table somewhere. This feeling made Alexander feel very uncomfortable, but he knew that this was not the time to go against the Mage Kings yet. In the vast palace, Alexander's voice rang out clearly. According to the agreement, the Evil God ritual will be starting in 3 days' time. How are the preparations going? The Red Mage King did not reply. He stood there like a wild beast, continuously scanning the two people on the thrones. The Black Mage King grinned and said, "Everyone has the sudden inspiration. Everyone should be able to sense it, right? That be asterisk, starred Fong, Xinjiang has already entered the city." The Black Mage King looked at the two people on the thrones, and his gaze flickered. He was also secretly astonished by the means of the Krieg royal family. He had originally wanted to use the ancient path of hell as cannon fodder to deal with the evil god's clone. However, he had not expected that the other party would find strong reinforcements from somewhere and bring along many divine-level experts. This was especially so for Shan's leader, true Lord Qingshan. This person was so terrifying that even the Black Mage King felt a little wary of him. Alexander's gaze did not change as he said calmly, "Right now, both of us have joined forces and are so powerful that even the holy sea of truth won't be able to humiliate us. So what if Fang Xingjian is just a kid? Moreover, since everyone has the sudden inspiration, we can all sense that Fang Xingjian is of unknown help to the evil god's descent." It was true that the black, red, gold, and purple mage kings were all peak experts at Tier 4, or even Tier 5 of the divine level. Alexander himself was at Tier 5 of the divine level, while the Abyss Lord was at Tier 4 of the divine level. True Lord Qingshan was also unfathomable. Although the people present were not sure of his exact strength, he was at least a Tier 5 divine level existence, and he also had many secret arts that were unheard of. With such a force, even if the Holy Sea of Truth came to stop them, they would probably not be able to do so without at least 5 Guardian Kings, let alone Fang Xingjian. And now, the Steel Lion Kingdom of the Northern Plains, the first Chanyu, had unified the plains and was no longer completely obedient to the Church. Moreover, the Church's 3 holy sons were constantly fighting amongst themselves. How could they possibly send more than 5 Guardian Kings down south? Both the Black Mage King and Alexander had grasped this timing very accurately. This was why they had dared to set up the evil god summoning ritual. Alexander continued, "There's no need to care about Fang Xingjian. Right now, we still need to prepare for the evil god ritual. As for the strength of the evil god's clone, we still need to make early preparations. Otherwise, when the evil god wreaks havoc in the world, we will have made a huge mistake. Now that things have come to this, shouldn't the Shaman King tell me about the evil gods?" The Black Mage King also nodded silently. Compared to Fang Xingjian, it was true that the evil god was the real threat. Every sorcerer knew how terrifying it was. It was enough to descend upon the entire world and borrow limitless power to give everyone endless knowledge. It was enough to make any powerhouse worship it. The Black Mage King said calmly, "The evil god clone that we've chosen to descend this time around is the red evil god's clone." The red evil god? Alexander subconsciously threw a glance toward the Red Mage King and said, "I heard that red faction black magic is an existence that keeps on adjusting and changing the physical body, getting closer to the red evil god." "That's right," the Black Mage King said. "Among the 12 evil gods, other than the red evil god, the other 11 don't have a concrete form or physical nature. They can be said to be extremely strange and even surpass the imagination of humans. They are unobservable, incalculable, and indescribable." Hearing the Black Mage King's words, Alexander felt a little disapproving and said, "Since that's the case, what abilities does this red evil god have?" "Abilities?" The Black Mage King lowered his head, sighed, and said, "Extremely fast, extremely strong." Just as the Black Mage King and Alexander were discussing the evil god's clone, outside the imperial capital, 2 men and 1 lady were standing silently in the shadows. These 3 people were Shang's highest leader, the top scholar of the Jade Dynasty 5,000 years ago, Grand Duke Alba. The Church of Universal Truth's Saint Luoluo from 3,000 years ago. There was also true Lord Qingshan, an expert who had lived countless years before the first onslaught. Almost at the first instant true Lord Qingshan came out from his seclusion, he rushed to the imperial capital and then waited quietly for 2 days and 2 nights. 2 days and 2 nights passed by in the blink of an eye. Even Saint Luoluo asked with some puzzlement, "Sir, what are we waiting for?" "We're waiting for Fang Xingjian." True Lord Qingshan opened his eyes, and there seemed to be countless data and formulas flowing in them. "This time around, I must kill this lad." However, Grand Duke Alba said, 1 month ago, Fang Xingjiang was already able to fight Alexander to a draw. With this person's talent and bloodline, he has probably improved by leaps and bounds over this 1 month. Based on the intelligence from my subordinates, the people from both the black and red factions have already entered the city. Right now, there might be 1 to 2 mage king level experts in the imperial capital, as well as Alexander and the Abyss Lord. Sir, if both you and Fang Xingjiang are injured, others might take advantage of this. True Lord Qingshan waved his hand, stopping Grand Duke Alba from continuing. He lifted his hand, and from where they were looking, the entire place was encompassed by a surge of chaotic air currents. Clear and turbid up and down, left and right, bright and dark air currents kept on spinning and moving about in the sky above the imperial capital. That terrifying power seemed to have encompassed the entire world. Even Grand Duke Alba, who was a Tier 4 divine level expert, felt that he was but an ant when he saw this scene. Even with his knowledge as the #1 scholar of the Jade dynasty that had unified the world 5,000 years ago, he was unable to recognize what formation this was. True Lord Qingshan said confidently, "Do you recognize this formation? This? What formation is this?" True Lord Qingshan said, "This is the duality minute formation. It can cover up the sky and cover the sun, but it can also cover up the entire world. The reason why I went into seclusion this time around was to cultivate this duality minute formation. I've been standing here for 2 days and 2 nights, and I've set up this formation with my unparalleled will. Once this formation is set up successfully, it'll be hidden at the ends of space-time at the extremity of the microscopic world. Even divine-level experts will find it hard to discover it. And once it's activated, it'll be able to wipe out everything with the chaotic cheese. Even a Tier 5 divine-level expert will be turned into ashes." This meant that even if true Lord Qingshan were to reveal the formation right now, only Alba and Luoluo would be able to see it if he was willing to. This was a formation that acted on the microscopic world, reacting to the macroscopic world through the changes in microscopic physics. Within the entire space in the imperial capital, all sorts of physical changes could be controlled by true Lord Qingshan with a single thought. Sensing the wonders of this formation and the power it contained, Grand Duke Alba's gaze revealed astonishment. His marshal will kept on scanning the profoundness of it, and the more he looked at it, the more astonished he felt. "Sir, is this the formation from ancient times before the first onslaught?" True Lord Qingshan smiled and did not reply. Instead, he looked at his stats window. It was a system called Fantasy Realm. Chapter 770. It was just like the parallel world with the Radiant Congress and the Crimson Alliance that Fang Xingjiang had been to before. In the era that true Lord Qingshan had lived in, the Night System had yet to be truly born. All extraordinary humans had their own different systems and obtained different extraordinary powers. And true Lord Qingshan was one of the top-notch experts back then. His fantasy realm system could transform all the things in the fantasy stories that he had heard and seen into real existences. The entire fantasy realm system was a huge exchange system, and the resources needed to exchange for it were true Lord Qingshan's fantasy values. What was fantasy value? It meant that if true Lord Qingshan firmly believed that an imaginary thing really existed, he would be able to obtain fantasy value. The more powerful and illogical the imaginary thing was, the more fantasy value he would be able to obtain if true Lord Qingshan could believe that it was real. Moreover, the prerequisite was that the thing was fake and did not exist. Although it sounded simple, it was very difficult for a normal person to do so. It was because the existence of fantasy value in the fantasy realm, as well as the prerequisite to obtain fantasy value, had already told true Lord Qingshan that everything in the system was fake and had been materialized by the fantasy system. Therefore, to use the fantasy system and materialize the fantasy system, one had to believe that all the imaginary things existed and were real to begin with. This was a contradictory thing in itself. True Lord Qingshan spent 10 years and finally understood a principle. There is only one type of person who could freely use this system, and that was a lunatic. They had to be a lunatic who had their own unique worldview, could justify themselves, had no flaws in a virtual worldview, and could never be proven to be fake. Otherwise, once their worldview was proven to be fake, their worldview would be broken, and they would face the danger of their worldview collapsing. Therefore, true Lord Qingshan spent 5 years and finally turned himself into the lunatic he had imagined. He had his own set of judgments toward everything and was almost like a fanatic who believed in his own understanding. This was an extremely terrifying side effect. Therefore, the entire Earth had welcomed an unprecedented doomsday back then. Many years later, true Lord Qingshan had woken up from nothingness. However, as he had only recovered a portion of his memories, a large portion of the worldview he had created was incomplete and not stable enough. This caused his fantasy value to increase very, very slowly and very little. It was only during his cultivation and seclusion earlier that he managed to retrieve a large amount of memories from the ether particles and reconstructed his fantasy view of the world. This allowed his fantasy value to increase. Although it was still far from the peak, he had finally managed to exchange for the duality minute formation. This formation could affect the macroscopic world from the microscopic world. Not only could it wipe out a divine-level expert's conjured physique, but it could also be used at the ends of space-time. This meant that one could entrust their powers outside of the timeline, and even the sudden inspiration would not be able to sense their attacks. This was an extremely terrifying point. Experts at Tier 4 of the divine level and above could all sense the existence of danger through their sudden inspiration. The duality minute formation could avoid the sudden inspiration senses and perform true sneak attacks. It was precisely because of the existence of this formation and the fact that Alexander, the Abyss Lord, and the others were holding him back that true Lord Qingshan was 70% or more confident that he would be able to deal Fang Xingjian a serious injury and 50% or more confident that he would be able to kill him. Looking at the distant imperial capital, true monarch Qingshan said, "Scions are the cancer of the universe. They are a cruel race that only knows how to destroy. Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I will definitely stop them." In comparison, Alexander, the Mage King, and the others are merely humans' internal strife. It doesn't matter to me who wins or loses. However, human society mustn't be destroyed in the hands of other races. Even if Alexander and the others take advantage of me and I have to sacrifice my life, I must kill this guy. As true Lord Qingshan spoke, waves of heroic and sacrificial disposition rose from his body. In the depths of his eyes, there was an extreme fanaticism hidden within. Grand Duke Alba said, "Sir, from the way I see it, that Fang Xingjian's battle style and the martial arts he learned seem to be martial arts from this world. Could it be that he's not a scion?" "No," true Lord Qingshan said solemnly. "He's a scion. There's no doubt about this. If he isn't killed, the entire world will welcome its end. It won't just be Miracle World. The entire planet will be destroyed by him. The power of a scion isn't something you can understand." True Lord Qingshan's tone was filled with certainty. It was clear that he was certain that scions were real and that Fang Xingjian was a scion. Hearing Grand Duke Alba's hesitation, true Lord Qingshan turned his head abruptly. "You don't believe me?" Grand Duke Alba immediately lowered his head and bowed. "I wouldn't dare." In the palace, Fang Xingjian had turned into a sword light and was strolling amidst the spatial gaps. He extended his senses and sensed the existence of danger. However, he did not sense an extreme sense of danger that could seriously injure or even kill him. It was like the feeling of death he had felt when he had sensed the Panwu heavenly raiment for the first time. Based on what Charlot said, I'll be seriously injured by true Lord Qingshan's sneak attack today. However, I don't sense such a feeling for my sudden inspiration. Did Charlot say it wrongly? Or does true Lord Qingshan possess some means to avoid my sudden inspiration? Ever since he had failed to sense Lilia's location, Fang Xingjian knew that his sudden inspiration was not omnipotent. For example, if he were to leave this world, his sudden inspiration would not be able to sense it. The sudden inspiration is a sense of the entire universe's timeline. things that can leave this timeline will also be able to break free from the sudden inspiration senses. Fang Xingjian thought, if that true Lord Qingshan really has a means to avoid his sudden inspiration, then I'll have to be careful. At the thought of this, Fang Xingjian did not plan on wasting any more time. The four swords darted out from void space and flew next to Fang Xingjian. Almost at the instant the four divine swords appeared, the celestial eradication sword formation was activated. Within a range of 100,000 meters, endless powers were about to explode from the physical particles and ether particles. Waves of profoundness that belonged to gravity, electromagnetism, and strong forces filled up this formation. Relying on his comprehension of the microscopic world, Fang Xingjian hid all of the sword formation's powers within the physical particles, maintaining its original appearance. Even divine-level experts would not be able to sense the existence of the sword formation if they did not check it carefully. However, Fang Xingjian believed that with the eruption of the sword formation, those divine-level experts who possessed the sudden inspiration would definitely be able to sense the existence of danger. However, Fang Xingjian had never thought of launching a sneak attack. Instead, he followed the vague feeling in his sudden inspiration and stepped into the most dangerous place in the palace. With a flash, he shot through countless walls, formations, and atmosphere like a stream of sword light, appearing in the Golden Palace Hall in a flash. The moment he appeared, Alexander, the Abyss Lord, the Black Mage King, and the Red Mage King all looked over. Martial wills that were as seething as the world descended from the sky, as if they were a material substance. They clashed against Fang Xingjian's sword intense, sending out waves of spatial ripples. Alexander's gaze was filled with astonishment and fury. It was as if he had not expected that Fang Xingjian would be so daring as to appear here. Chapter 771. Alexander stood up abruptly, and with this action of his, the entire palace seemed to tremble a little. He swelled up like an inflated balloon, reaching a height of about 10 meters. Endless power exuded from his body, and he emitted a brilliant golden light. It was as if the legendary king of gods had descended into the mortal world. Fang Xingjian, how dare you barge into the palace in the middle of the night? Do you admit to your crimes? Fang Xingjian looked at Alexander and said coldly, Alexander, why are you putting on an act? You weren't a match for me over a month ago, and it's even easier for me to kill you now. If it wasn't because there are others around, you would have died long ago. This time around, Fang Xingjian had barged into the palace at night because his sword arts had improved by leaps and bounds once again. His light pursuit sword technique now had the ability to turn his conjured physique into sword light. Therefore, he had the confidence to test out the abilities of the mage king experts, as well as Alexander and the others. If it was possible, he wanted to kill Alexander and the Abyss Lord so that they would not continue to go against him in the future. If it was possible, it would be best if he killed the Black Mage King and the others as well to get rid of all future troubles. However, he also knew that this was not very possible. After all, as the leader of the Mage Association in name, Fang Xingjian had dominated the world for over 100 years and had grasped countless secret arts and treasures. Fang Xingjian's abilities were deep and unfathomable, and it was impossible for Fang Xingjian to kill him easily. On the other hand, Fang Xingjian wanted to verify Charlot's information. If what Charlot said was true, Fang Xingjian did not mind killing that true Lord Qingshan in passing. This would save him from being in hiding and becoming an increasingly great threat. Hearing Fang Xingjian's words, the killing intent in Alexander's eyes grew increasingly intense. Behind him, the Abyss Lord's body became increasingly dark, turning into an extremely thick layer of black fog. It was no longer possible to see his original appearance clearly. The Abyss Lord said coldly, "Be ****starred. As the Empire's subject, you enjoy the Empire's benefits and learn the Empire's knowledge. Yet now, you're going against our royal family. Do you have a clear conscience?" At this moment, he was looking at Fang Xingjian as though he was looking at a traitorous slave. His eyes were filled with hatred. Fang Xingjian laughed and said, "The one who taught me sword arts was Cursed Academy's teacher Huang Lin, and the one who helped me improve was a senior from the Second Prince's faction. What has this got to do with you guys? What a traitorous, lowly slave." The Nether King was furious. "Big brother, why are you still talking to him? Take him down and tear him to pieces." Just as the Abyss Lord was speaking, killing intent flashed in Fang Xingjian's eyes. Among the 4 long swords on his back, the Abyss Longsword's sword light burst out, bringing along a myriad of infiltrating void sword intents that shook up the space. Fang Xingjian had already arrived before the Abyss Lord. The Abyss Lord's countenance changed, and his black martial will turned into a gate to hell that appeared before him. The gate to hell was about 30 meters tall and 10 meters wide, and there were countless spirits of the dead climbing and wailing on it. It was just like the legendary gate that had come from hell. The Hell's Gate was meant to cut off the connection between the mortal world and hell. This Hell's Gate, which the Abyss Lord had condensed with his martial will, could slow down space and stretch out the gaps between them. It could even fend off a Tier 5 divine level attack. Even Alexander would not be able to break through it easily. However, when Fang Xingjian was facing this Hell's Gate, his infiltrating void sword intents could be transmitted through space. They completely ignored the defense of this martial will, passing through it and slashing onto the Abyss Lord's body without any reservations. Amidst a loud bang, a myriad of streams of sword light swept past the Abyss Lord's body. As waves of ripples appeared in space, many cracks appeared on the Abyss Lord's conjured physique. He let out a stifled snort and retreated 10 steps, looking at Fang Xingjian in disbelief. Fang Xingjian said coldly, "If you continue spouting nonsense, I'll chop off your head." Hearing Fang Xingjian's words, hints of redness flashed on the Abyss Lord's face. He was so infuriated that he was trembling. However, he did not say another word. It was because this sword attack had let him know the difference between him and Fang Xingjian. As Fang Xingjian's sword technique astonished everyone, the Abyss Lord did not say another word. Even the gazes of Alexander and the 2 Mage Kings kept on fluctuating incessantly. The Black Mage King thought, "This is the sword technique that defeated Alexander? To think that it can penetrate the defense of one's martial will. It's amazing. However, if he wants to deal with us, just this move alone isn't enough." The Abyss Lord spoke to Alexander through his will. "Eldest brother, what are we still waiting for? This guy has walked right into our trap. Won't we still be able to easily suppress him with the combined powers of the 4 of us?" As the ancient path of Hell's sect master, when had the Abyss Lord ever received such humiliation from Fang Xingjian? Moreover, with the 4 top-notch experts present in the palace, the Abyss Lord felt that Fang Xingjian had walked right into their trap and was like a turtle in a jar. However, Alexander did not reply. On one hand, he knew that Fang Xingjian was not to be underestimated. On the other hand, the 2 Mage King level experts were naturally not on his side. His gaze narrowed slightly as he looked toward the Black Mage King and the Red Mage King, saying, "The 2 of you, this guy is arrogant and has always done whatever he wants. Why don't we suppress him today and use him as a sacrifice for the evil god's descent?" However, Fang Xingjian let out a cold snort and said, "Black Mage King, this is a feud between me and the Krieg royal family. It's best that you don't interfere in this. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless." As Fang Xingjian said this, the 4 long swords on his back let out a series of soft hums, and the seething power of the celestial eradication sword formation burst out. Each physical particle in the world was like a world of its own, emitting streams of eerie sword intents. However, what kind of character was the Black Mage King? He was a formidable character who even dared to go up against the holy sea of truth. How could he possibly be threatened? Moreover, the Black Mage King's suggestion of suppressing Fang Xingjian and sacrificing him in the ritual also tempted the Black Mage King. This would save them from the depletion of the ritual, and it would also go along with the sudden inspirations feeling toward Fang Xingjian. It would be helpful for the evil god ritual. Moreover, The four great experts were all present, and they were in the Krieg Royal Palace. In the Black Mage King's opinion, Feng Xingjian had no chance of winning at all. Young Star Sword, the first thing you need to do is to respect your teachers and seniors. Since you're so arrogant, I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of your parents, the Black Mage King said with a smile. He looked at Feng Xingjian and said, "Young Red, beat him to death." As the Black Mage King gave the order, the Red Mage King, who was 3 meters tall, had a pair of legs on his head, a tail growing out of his tailbone, and was covered in a layer of gray stratum corneum, moved. As he moved, the space around him was squeezed into many black cracks. Astonishing power erupted from his feet, and the entire Golden Palace Hall started to crack under his stomp. It even started to fall toward the ground. Chapter 772. The corners of the Red Mage King's lips curled up into a brutal smile, and he looked at Feng Xingjian like he was looking at a prey. The Red Mage King appeared almost instantly before Feng Xingjian, and his elbow smashed out like a missile. Wherever it passed by, the space seemed to start to collapse. This made Feng Xingjian feel that it was not a person who was coming toward him, but a planet. At this moment, Feng Xingjian's eyes also revealed a hint of astonishment. It was because he sensed that the number of physical particles in the Red Mage King's body surpassed the 1.08 billion that ordinary people possessed. There were trillions of physical particles releasing powers in the Red Mage King's body. There were almost no gaps in the Red Mage King's body, and all of the physical particles were densely packed together. The density that exceeded the limits of the Red Mage King's body meant that he did not have a so-called conjured physique. It was because there was no space for the Red Mage King's body structure to be arranged according to a special formation. The Red Mage King's body was merely compressed together violently, forming a body density that surpassed that of ordinary people's. If it was said that a demigod's body was porcelain and Alexander's was a rock, then the Red Mage King's body would be the most advanced special steel. At the next moment, the Red Mage King's elbow passed through Feng Xingjian's body, and a terrifying power exploded from his elbow. The air, which had been lashed out intensely and from the friction, turned into a stretch of fire cloud that charged out. It tore through the Golden Palace Hall and soared into the sky, turning into a soaring pillar of fire. Missing his attack, the Red Mage King looked at Feng Xingjian's light body in a slight daze. However, Feng Xingjian looked at the Red Mage King with a grim gaze. If it was not because his light pursuit sword technique had improved further, allowing him to turn his body into sword light that had no mass, the Red Mage King's elbow attack earlier would have been sufficient to shatter his conjured physique. It was true that these mages were not to be underestimated. At the same time as the Red Mage King made his move, the other 3 people present also made their moves. Right now, with Feng Xingjian's reputation and abilities, no one dared to look down on him. No one present had the thought of hiding their abilities either. The moment they made their moves, they wanted to completely suppress Feng Xingjian. Alexander let out an explosive bellow, and a long white satin appeared out of thin air. There were all sorts of human figures drawn on the long satin, and all the mysteries of the human body seemed to be hidden on the white satin. Near the human figures were many languages and words that had never been seen before. These words exuded an aura of hellish sulfur. Even the most uncultured person would have the first impression that these words belonged to hell. In particular, there were traces of bright red on the silk, as if it was the blood of some mysterious creature. This was the ancient path of Hell's cornerstone treasure, an existence that surpassed the Hell's armor. It was the ancient path of Hell's ultimate weapon, Adam's shroud. It was said that when the founder of the ancient path of Hell, Adam, had faked his death for the first time, the satin had been placed on him. It was stained with Adam's will and blood. Not only did it contain all of the ancient path of Hell's martial arts, but it also contained Saint Adam's power. It was a power that was at tier 6 of the divine level or above, and it contained the profoundness of time. This number 1 divine level weapon from the ancient path of hell had been enshrined in the Empire's imperial ancestral temple all year round. It was heavily protected by countless restrictions in order to prevent the power on it from seeping away. After all, divine-level experts could die as well. Even Saint Adam was not immortal, and the power he had left behind was naturally not eternal either. Therefore, Adam's shroud had always been under strict protection. It was worshipped and protected by countless people day and night in order to prevent its power from seeping away, allowing Krieg's descendants to use it in crucial stone carvings. This time around, Alexander had brought it out from the imperial ancestral temple. The moment he made his move, he displayed the prowess of the number 1 divine weapon from the ancient path of hell. Almost at the instant Adam's shroud appeared, it had already pierced through Feng Xingjian's body, which had turned into light. The attack of this Adam's shroud clearly did not require time. The moment it was activated was the moment it would hit its target. If it was not because Feng Xingjian's body had turned into light, he would have been seriously injured by this shroud. The Abyss Lord also made a move. However, he knew that the disparity between him and Feng Xingjian was too great. Therefore, he did not attack Feng Xingjian. Instead, with a sway of his body, he appeared outside the Gold Palace. Immediately after, the entire palace emitted a bright light. He had activated the formation in the palace. The Krieg royal family had been established for over 200 years, and the palace had long been guarded by layers of stacking formations. With the activation of the formations, countless spatial ripples encompassed the Gold Palace. Not only did they stop the attacks from the Gold Palace, but they also continued to stretch out and distort space. Streams of martial will penetrated the Gold Palace, wanting to trap Feng Xingjian completely within it. Simultaneously, the world changed, and countless mountains of blades and seas of flames appeared in void space. The Abyss Lord pulled the entire palace into his divine country, and his will reverberated throughout the world. Ha ha ha! Feng Xingjian, if you want to blame something, blame your bad luck. To think that you would dare to barge in here today. This is what it means when there's a path in the mortal world. You choose to barge in instead. Feng Xingjian had barged in today and happened to encounter 4 great experts. To the Abyss Lord, this was a heaven-sent opportunity. Under the reinforcement from both the divine country and the palace's formation, the entire Gold Palace seemed to have turned into an alternate world. The Abyss Lord was determined to not let Feng Xingjian escape. On the other side, the Black Mage King also made his move. This expert, who had reigned supreme in the world for over 100 years and had once fought against the Holy Sea of Truth, displayed the terrifying power of a mage king the moment he made his move. A pure black silhouette appeared behind him. The black silhouette bore a slight resemblance to the Black Mage King, but was a lot stronger. It looked just like the Black Mage King when he was younger. The main purpose of the Black Robe faction's black magic was to keep engulfing the wills and physical bodies of others to strengthen themselves. When they became stronger to a certain extent, they would be able to use the excess powers to condense an external clone. Not only did this external clone possess 100% of the Black Mage King's powers, but it was also like a lump of shadow, having no mass and no actual structure. It could be used on the opponent, but would not be affected by the opponent's attacks. It was one of the trump cards of the Black Robe faction. With a flash, the massless shadow appeared behind Feng Xingjian at light speed and punched fiercely toward Feng Xingjian's back. Wherever it passed by, the space would collapse, and Feng Xingjian's entire body turned pitch black, as if he had been encompassed by darkness. The power of this punch from the Black Mage King could condense the entire imperial capital into a point the size of a fingernail. However, regardless of whether it was the Red Mage King's extremely dense body, Alexander's Atom Shroud, which could ignore time, or the attack from the Black Mage King's external clone that was like a miniature black hole, none of them were able to deal any serious damage to Feng Xingjian, who had turned into light. Just as the trio's attacks pierced through Feng Xingjian's body almost simultaneously, the Thunder Calamity Longsword was already in Feng Xingjian's hand, and he immediately launched a sharp counterattack. With this attack from Fang Xingjian, he displayed his top-notch sword arts cultivation, causing the hearts of the three people present to tremble violently. Explosive electric light shot out from the Thunder Calamity longsword, and the all-conquering sword slashed down. The profoundness of electromagnetic forces was contained within it, and a sharp sword force that could tear through any physical structure slashed onto the Red Mage King's body. Concurrently, the Abyss Longsword was activated, and layers of stacking gravitational waves radiated out. The infiltrating Void Sword Intense darted through void space, passed through Atom Shroud's defense, and slashed out toward Alexander's head. The White Bone Short Sword also exploded. The Light Pursuit Sword Intense, which contained the profoundness of gravity, electromagnetic forces, and strong interaction, turned into a myriad of sword light that encompassed the Black Mage King's body. Chapter 773. The Thunder Calamity Longsword descended from the sky, and the all-conquering sword Intent slashed out fiercely toward the Red Mage King along with the violent heavenly thunders and terrestrial magnetism forces. However, when faced with this sword attack that could slice through everything in the world, the Red Mage King did not show any hesitation or fear. He punched out toward the Red Mage King's chest. Amidst the intense spatial tremors, the Thunder Calamity collided fiercely with the Red Mage King's fist. However, the Thunder Calamity that could slice through everything in the world only managed to slash the Red Mage King's fist to his wrist before it felt powerless. The density of the Red Mage King's body was too high, and the amount of energy he needed to deplete for each inch of space he sliced through was over 10,000 times that of other divine-level experts. On the other side, the Abyss Longsword brought along endless gravitational forces as it cut across space, penetrated through Atom's shroud, and collided into Alexander's chest like a star. The Abyss Longsword, which appeared to be like an illusion and could not withstand any force, was able to force Alexander to retreat repeatedly with just this collision. Kacha-kacha, shattering sounds rang out all over his body, and several cracks appeared on his conjured physique. The Black Mage King, who was encompassed by the myriad of sword light, let out a furious bellow and broke free from the restraints of the sword light. At the next moment, he swelled up like an inflated balloon, instantly seeming to return to his 25-year-old self. His muscles were like marble, and the aura throughout his body kept on rising. He was like the sun on the horizon that had suddenly turned from a sunrise to a midday sun, giving off a feeling as if the sun was in the middle of the sky. In that instant, Fang Xingjian unleashed 3 consecutive sword attacks, forcing the Red Mage King to retreat, breaking through Alexander's conjured physique, and forcing the Black Mage King to no longer be able to conceal his strength. However, at the next moment, another 3 sword attacks came slashing down. The Abyss Longsword once again shot out toward Alexander's chest like a ghost. Amidst his enraged martial will, Alexander ignored the injuries on his body and unleashed his power once again. Atom's shroud instantly wrapped up the entire Abyss Longsword. However, it was useless. The Abyss Longsword did not manage to stop Alexander for even 1/millionth of a second. The Abyss Longsword pierced through the layers of martial will, the overturned hell, and mortal world reversal's dual defenses, and once again slashed onto Alexander's body. A loud bang rang out in void space, and a large piece of Alexander's chest shattered like glass. His face turned pale, and he took a step back. Be *starred. Stop! The Black Mage King let out an enraged bellow and grabbed the incoming White Bone Longsword. However, the sword shattered like light rays, and at the next moment, even more sword light encompassed his body. However, while the Black Mage King's physical body was temporarily stopped, his clone was unable to do so. This clone was like a shadow, passing through layers of sword intense and landing a punch on the Abyss Longsword at light speed, wanting to stop Fang Xingjian from attacking Alexander. However, Regardless of whether it was the Abyss longsword that was transmitted through space or the clone that had zero mass, there was no way for them to interfere with each other. Fang Xingjian could only watch as they pierced through each other. Fang Xingjian's sword once again slashed onto Alexander's chest. Once again, a bell-like silhouette rang out in the void, and a series of fragments and cracks fell from Alexander's body. He grunted, and his face turned pale as he took another step back. Roar! The Red Mage King was infuriated as well. To think that Alexander, who was a demon among demons and a beast among beasts, was still being inflicted with serious injuries by Fang Xingjian. How could this demon among demons, a beast among beasts, tolerate this? As Crimson Red Martial will burst out from his body, the Red Mage King slapped out and grabbed out fiercely toward Fang Xingjian's body. He did not care about the Thunder Tribulation's attacks at all. Streaks of sword marks burst out from his body, but he used his super dense body to block them. At the same time, as he reached out with his hand, the entire world seemed to darken. Capture of heaven and earth. This time around, the Red Mage King no longer relied on his physical attributes to attack casually. Instead, he started to perform his martial arts. With this, the destructive prowess that was worlds apart was revealed. With the capture of heaven and earth, the Red Mage King's palm was like a collapsing star. Using his highly dense body as a medium, he unleashed an unrivaled gravitational force. It was as if he wanted to attract everything in the world into his palm and then grind and crush them. Before Fang Xingjian, it was as if the entire world and him had been grabbed into the Red Mage King's palm. All the wind, water, earth, fire, past, and future were going to be crushed into dust. Usually, when the Red Mage King performed this move, even a Tier 1 or 2 divine level expert would be wiped out by him with a single move. The other party's physical body would even be engulfed by him, once again increasing the density of his body. Faced with the Red Mage King's attack, Fang Xingjian let out a cold snort and allowed the capture of heaven and earth. He instantly turned into a stream of light spot and was sucked into the Red Mage King's palm. However, at the next moment, as a series of shattered light spots appeared, Fang Xingjian once again appeared at his original position. The Red Mage King's attack had distorted Fang Xingjian, but it was still unable to really harm Fang Xingjian, who had turned into light. Under Fang Xingjian's control, the Abyss Sword had already slashed out for the third time. Looking at the Abyss longsword descending from the sky like it was invincible and unstoppable, a hint of terror finally flashed in Alexander's eyes. Layers of Adam's shroud wrapped around Alessandra without regard for time. The wrapping was completed in an instant, protecting Alessandra from head to toe. Lines, words, and patterns with a mysterious hellish aura twisted on the shroud. Even Alexander himself would find it hard to break through such an all-round defense. However, Adam's shroud was still in space. Faced with the infiltrating void sword which transmitted through space, it was like smoke. It was pierced through and once again tapped on Alexander's chest. There was an explosive bang, and Adam's shroud suddenly fell apart. A large, transparent hole had appeared in Alexander's chest. He took 3 steps back, and the cracks on his chest spread out to the rest of his body. F*CKU. At the sight of this scene, the Black Mage King was finally infuriated. If the world were to find out that the 4 of them had joined forces and had still been killed by Fang Xingjian, then there would be no need for the Black Mage King to continue living in the world. At the next moment, Black Martial will filled up the entire Golden Palace Hall like surges of torrents. He's turned into light. Don't use ordinary means. Hit him at the level of a speck of dust. Hearing the Black Mage King's reminder, the remaining few people revealed a hint of comprehension on their faces. Simultaneously, the Black Mage King and his clone had already arrived next to Fang Xingjian one after the other, launching punches and kicks in an ordinary manner. Faced with this punch and kick, Fang Xingjian finally revealed an astonished expression and tapped out with a finger. The fist and finger collided, and as a gotcha sound rang out, a crack appeared on Fang Xingjian's finger. Chapter 774. Feng Xingjian's body turned into sword light, and ordinary macroscopic attacks were no longer effective. However, the Black Mage King soon saw through the principle behind this and came up with a countermeasure. It was to perform his powers into the microscopic domain and attack Feng Xingjian's body, which had turned into photons. Although photons sounded like particles, they were not really particles. The Black Mage King's attack did not seem to have any special features on the surface, but the force of his fist had already reached the microscopic domain, far surpassing the nanometer, femtometer, and picometer level. It turned into an invisible wave and struck out onto photons. Therefore, as the fist and fingers clashed, cracks appeared on Feng Xingjian's sword fingers for the first time. At the next moment, the Black Mage King's next kick arrived at the same time, instantly appearing before Feng Xingjian in a flash. It was blocked by the white bone longsword's thrust. The white bone longsword was instantly sent flying, and the Black Mage King's clone punched out with both fists, smashing toward Feng Xingjian's back. With a flash, the Red Mage King's body appeared next to Feng Xingjian with layers of stacking air currents and the tilting of the entire Golden Palace Hall. He then smashed out a punch toward Feng Xingjian's head. In an instant, the powers of a celestial eradication, sword formation, turned into streams of sword cheese, blocking the Red Mage King's fist. After they were all shattered, the Thunder Calamity and the Red Mage King clashed head-on, and both parties retreated. As Feng Xingjian retreated, the Black Mage King gave chase and punched down once again, turning the entire Golden Palace Hall into a vacuum state. All of the powers gathered toward Feng Xingjian's photon body. The Black Mage King said coldly, "Feng Xingjian, your protective technique has already been broken. Are you still going to hold on? Cut the crap. Take another sword attack from me." At the next moment, the sword and fist collided. The Black Mage King's fist turned into a pile of fragments, and a part of Feng Xingjian's white bone sword also broke off with a cautious sound. "Let me eat him up." The Red Mage King let out a strange bellow, and his fists flashed continuously, smashing down toward Feng Xingjian like a meteor shower. How can a beast learn martial arts? Feng Xingjian let out a cold laugh, and the broken white bone longsword in his hand was replaced with the Thunder Calamity longsword. With a thrust, over 1,000 light spots instantly appeared on the Red Mage King's body. They broke through the surface of the Red Mage King's body and broke the balance of his attacks. Feng Xingjian was about to take advantage of the situation to give chase when he sensed danger. With a flash, the Black Mage King's clone descended from the sky and stomped down, causing the entire Golden Palace Hall to tremble intensely. This series of close combat between the three of them was astonishingly fast. Other than Feng Xingjian, who was gliding around with sword light, the other two Mage Kings were also regrouping and moving at a speed akin to light speed. Every punch and kick was like a flash of lightning, and it was impossible to observe the process of the changes. He had to rely on his sudden inspiration to attack and dodge. Moreover, it was different from how the world would change with every single move of the divine-level experts in the past. The trio's powers were all gathered in the competition in the microscopic domain, clashing in a spatial scale that was even smaller than that of physical particles, molecules, atoms, atomic nuclei, and electrons. From the surface, there was not much astonishing destructive prowess. However, Emperor Alexander, who was standing at the side, could see through his martial will that with each exchange between the three of them, violent powers would explode in a spatial scale that could not be seen by the naked eye. Each time there was an explosion, a myriad of microscopic black holes would appear. These microscopic black holes would only last for less than 0.0001 seconds before disappearing. However, they engulfed countless ether particles and physical particles, causing almost all the repercussions from the trio's battle to be absorbed. As a result, there was not much destructive prowess. With a bang, Feng Xingjian's fist collided with the Black Mage King's fist, and countless cracks flashed on his heaven-connecting sword physique. Amidst the rumbling sounds of explosive thunder, the Thunder Calamity slashed onto the Red Mage King's body, sending him flying once again. Amidst the myriad of sword light, the two white bone swords turned into a myriad of sword shadows that swept out toward the Black Mage King. However, they were struck out by the Black Mage King's clone with a single punch. The space trembled, the microscopic time collapsed, and the sword shadows were all sent flying out. Seeing how the three of them were exchanging blows, and how Feng Xingjian did not seem to be weaker in the slightest, Alexander could not help but gasp in his heart. This kid is too terrifying. We must kill him today. Otherwise, he'll be our nightmare in the future. The eyelids of the Abyss Lord, who had sealed up the Golden Palace Hall and performed the Divine Country, were also twitching. We must kill him. If we don't kill him, with his potential, who will be able to survive in the future? Just as the two of them were thinking of this, the celestial eradication sword formation erupted fiercely. The instant sword was activated, and a sword mark that seemed to have slashed through space-time appeared on the Black Mage King's body, forcing him back with a single sword attack. Although the Black Mage King's body recovered rapidly, this sword attack gave the Black Mage King a fright. What sword technique is this? The Red Mage King was about to attack when he was encompassed by a myriad of sword light. Concurrently, the two white bone swords and the Abyss sword each performed the light pursuit sword and the all-conquering sword respectively, turning into a myriad of sword shadows that charged out. Scram! After stopping the Red Mage King and Black Mage King at one go, Feng Xingjian's figure flashed. Holding onto the Abyss longsword, he slashed out toward Alexander. Die! The celestial eradication sword formation was unleashed at full force, and endless power was channeled into Feng Xingjian's body. The Abyss longsword traversed a distance of several hundred meters and appeared on Alexander's forehead with a flash. At this moment, Alexander knew that he had to go all out. Would he be slashed to death by Feng Xingjian first, or would Feng Xingjian be pushed back and killed by the two Mage Kings? As long as he could hang on, he would definitely be able to win this battle. In that instant, streams of blue flames started burning inside and outside his body. Each stream of flames was like crystal, encompassing his entire body. Simultaneously, the entire Golden Palace Hall was also set ablaze with flames. The two auras seemed to have completely joined together, turning into one. At this moment, Alexander finally activated the protective formation in the Golden Palace Hall, connecting himself with the Golden Palace Hall and sharing all the damage he received with the Palace Hall. The entire Golden Palace Hall was something that the Krieg royal family had expended countless materials and set up countless formations over 200 years. Even after going through a series of intense battles earlier, and even the Red Mage King's continuous stomps, the Palace Hall had only been slanted and had not been destroyed. From this, one could tell how sturdy the Golden Palace Hall was. Moreover, the Palace Hall was located in the Abyss Lord's Divine Country, so the damage would be shared between the Abyss Lord and his Divine Country. Come on, Feng Xingjian. Let's see if you die first, or if I die first. Alexander's martial will bellowed furiously, and at the next moment, it collided with the Abyss longsword. Chapter 775. What? Seeing that the two Mage Kings had rushed over, Alexander let out a long sigh inwardly. True Lord Qingshan was left looking at his stats window with a savage expression. At this moment, the omnipresent light in the world was a part of Feng Xingjian. True Lord Qingshan's reaction was very fast. Almost at the instant Feng Xingjian took form, he had already flipped his hand and pointed out, bringing along streams of chaotic air currents from the duality minute formation, which shot out toward Feng Xingjian's body. The Abyss Lord, who had taken on a portion of Alexander's damage, was beaten to death. The end of the microscopic world was the end of space-time. It was also the final domain that Feng Xingjian had reached when striving for the divine level. Space-time was won, and the concept of time and space had been lost. If one were to enter a place that was extremely far away, it would be another universe. With this activation, it instantly surrounded Feng Xingjian, wanting to convert all physical particles, photons, waves, and everything else within the range into pure energy. In an instant, chaotic air currents gushed out from all directions, gushing out toward Feng Xingjian. The Black Mage King's clone unleashed overwhelming black flames, and its legs wrapped around Feng Xingjian's waist. Its hands were like two continents colliding, bringing along unimaginably majestic powers as they smashed out toward Feng Xingjian's head from the left and right respectively. Stop! At the next moment, the duality minute formation's air currents encompassed Feng Xingjian's body, wanting to completely obliterate him into pure energy. Feng Xingsort, outside the Golden Palace, the Abyss Lord, who had been taking on the damage, had already shattered and dissipated. His eyes were still filled with disbelief and despair. At the next second, he shattered completely with a swoosh, turning into countless light spots that dissipated into the world. Join forces with him. As the clone's fists landed on the back of Feng Xingjian's waist, a myriad of fragments soared into the air. However, Feng Xingjian did not care about them. He pulled back the abyss in his hand and slashed out at Alexander's body. The Black Mage King's clone's palms slapped fiercely onto Feng Xingjian's body, and many cracks instantly covered up Feng Xingjian's entire head. Feng Xingjian, as long as I'm here, it won't be your turn to run wild. The Red Mage King and the Black Mage King each punched out explosively onto Feng Xingjian's body across space, causing a series of ripples to appear on Feng Xingjian's body. True Lord Qingshan looked at the sky in disbelief. In this instant, Feng Xingjian seemed to have turned into a sun, and all of his will and conjured physique turned into endless light that emitted out. He really is an extraordinaire fantasy kingdom system. Simultaneously, Feng Xingjian's voice rang out softly in true Lord Qingshan's ears. Have a good taste of it. This sword attack has been left especially for you. At this moment, a hint of despair finally appeared in Alessandra's eyes. He still had endless ambitions and great ambitions. He had the Krieg royal family's 200 years of accumulation and the ancient path of Hell's several thousand years of legacies. Moreover, the speed of light was far too fast. Although the three experts tried their best to restrain an attack, they were only able to stop a portion of it. However, just as the corners of Alessandra's lips curled up into a hint of a smile, just as he thought that victory was in his grasp. However, at this moment, Feng Xingjian's body exploded abruptly like a star in the universe, collapsing, exploding, and burning. He then turned into endless sparks that shone out. My fantasy kingdom system. This duality minute formation could engulf the entire world or be used at the ends of space-time. However, Feng Xingjian was even faster. At the same time, when his body was engulfed by the chaotic air currents, the all-conquering sword intent had already slashed on a true Lord Qingshan's body. At the same time, when the divine country disappeared, two streams of chaotic air currents, one bright and one dark, one clear and one turbid, suddenly appeared with a flash, instantly encompassing the entire Golden Hall. Just as Alessandra thought that he would definitely die this time around, the world changed, and the Abyss Lord's divine country disappeared. The myriad of sword light that had encompassed the world earlier had also completely disappeared, and Feng Xingjian was nowhere to be found. Yet today, was he going to be killed by a lad who had only risen to power 3 years ago? The Black Mage King was infuriated, and he finally shattered the myriad of sword cheese with a punch. With a flash, he appeared behind Feng Xingjian. You must die. The Black Mage King grinned, and the Red Mage King also broke into a cruel smile. True Lord Qingshan stood up abruptly, and everyone focused their attention on Feng Xingjian. That's it. The duality minute formation could store power at the ends of space-time, at the limits of the microscopic world, and then attack. It could wipe out all the particles and waves in the microscopic world into energy. This was the highest realm of Feng Xingjian's light pursuit sword, turning all of his powers into light and exploding them out. Amidst crisp kacha-kacha sounds, Alessandra's upper body was covered in cracks. A huge crack passed through the Golden Hall from the south to the north, and the walls of the Golden Hall kept on shattering, as if they were going to fall apart at any moment. It's true Lord Qingshan. In the north of the imperial capital, true Lord Qingshan's eyes gleamed brightly. Now's the time. At the next moment, the Fang Xingjian, which was formed from this stream of sword light, dissipated completely. The other sword lights were also wiped out by the chaotic air currents, turning into pure light energy that replenished the duality minute formation. This was the reason why Fang Xingjian dared to barge into the palace at night. No matter how strong the other party was, it was impossible for him to instantly intercept several hundred millions of sword lights. Boom! I finally made it in time. The Black Mage King, who had been temporarily stopped by the Celestial Eradication Sword Formation, bellowed, "Fang Xingjian, how dare you?" However, Fang Xingjian did not care about the attack coming from behind him. The sword intents on his body soared into the sky as if they were going to pierce through the entire world. The abyss in his hand slashed down once again, and under Alisanda's astonished gaze, it arrived inch by inch before his eyes. Is he dead? At the speed of lightning, true Lord Qingshan, the Black Mage King, and the Red Mage King, the three top-notch experts, attacked Fang Xingjian concurrently. This was when Fang Xingjian had gone all out to kill Alisanda. As the Abyss longsword got closer, more and more cracks appeared on Alisanda's body. His entire body was like a piece of shattered jade, about to break down completely at any moment. At this moment, Fang Xingjian seemed to have stepped into a state of certain death. The Red Mage King let out a strange cry, and his chest, stomach, and thigh were pierced by the Thunder Calamity and the White Bone Sword respectively. However, he made use of this to shrink his physical body and temporarily held back the three long swords. Then he punched out across space, and violent fist force continued to transmit in the microscopic world. It was as if the radiation of stars had crossed galaxies, smashing toward Fang Xingjian's body across a distance of several hundred meters. My system. Kacha-kacha sounds kept ringing out, and the large hole in Alisanda's chest expanded once again. Simultaneously, the Black Mage King and the Red Mage King also understood what was going on. Amidst the furious bellows, true Lord Qingshan's clone had already caught up to Fang Xingjian. It cupped its fists and raised them up high, smashing toward the back of Fang Xingjian's waist like a cannonball. After the myriad of sword lights scattered, a portion of them formed a human figure behind true Lord Qingshan. I can't accept this. I can't accept this. Fang Xingjian must be suppressed today. Layers and layers of stacking martial will were unleashed explosively, but they were unable to fend off the Abyss longsword that was transmitted through space. The strength that Alisanda had been proud of was completely useless before Fang Xingjian's sword arts. At this moment, the duality minute formation was fully activated. Chaotic cheese appeared in void space, filling up the entire Golden Palace Hall and encompassing toward Fang Xingjian. Chapter 776. The system had always been the greatest reliance for extraordinary humans. This was even more so for an expert like true Lord Qingshan. How much had true Lord Qingshan paid for the sake of this fantasy kingdom system? He had even completely destroyed his own life, his worldview, and his own personality. For the sake of this fantasy kingdom system, he had destroyed everything he had. Yet now this system was gone. It had been slashed away by Fang Xingjian with a light sword attack. How could he possibly tolerate this? True Lord Qingshan felt as if his heart was dripping blood. Fang Xingjian. Endless fury burned in true Lord Qingshan's eyes, as if wanting to incinerate the entire world. Sensing the killing intent coming from true Lord Qingshan and seeing streams of chaotic air currents floating around in the air, Grand Duke Alba's face was filled with trepidation. "What's wrong, sir? Has Fang Xingjian escaped?" Grand Duke Alba asked. "He's escaped, but he won't be able to." There seemed to be material killing intent spewing out from true Lord Qingshan's eyes as he gritted his teeth and said, "Even if I have to go to the ends of the world, Even if I have to go to the depths of hell, I must find him. He's dead for sure. With that, he turned and looked toward the southwest. Come, let's head to the Great Western region. I'm going to kill everyone who is related to Fong Xingjian. Grand Duke Alba and Saint Loluo exchanged a glance, not knowing what on earth had happened. This was the first time they had seen true Lord Qingshan so enraged. Just then, a female voice rang out in true Lord Qingshan's ears, gradually calming down the enraged true Lord Qingshan. Calm down, true Lord Qingshan. If you wish to kill Fong Xingjian, you'll only be able to do so in the central region's imperial capital. The atmosphere in the palace was gloomy and gloomy. No one knew what had happened. They only knew that there had been a sudden burst of light in the night, and then chaotic air currents swept past, accompanied by a myriad of white light and explosions. Thereafter, the people in the palace faced Alexander's fury. More than 10 servants and maids were executed by the enraged Alexander. The entire imperial capital was in a state of tension. A large number of soldiers were patrolling the streets. A powerful will was emitted from the palace and swept through the entire imperial capital. Everyone felt as if their bodies were being swept by a furious will. That was Alexander's will. In the palace, Alexander sat on the throne with a cold glint in his eyes. Not only had Fong Xingjian left, but everyone else in the second prince's residence had also left. Unfilial son, traitorous bastards. Alexander roared in a low voice while suppressing his anger. He could be said to have suffered heavy losses in today's battle. Not only had his right-hand man, his closest brother, the Abyss Lord, been killed by Fong Xingjian, but he had also been severely injured by Fong Xingjian. Right now, his conjured physique was covered in all sorts of cracks, and there were no signs of it healing. At the thought of Fong Xingjian's elusive swordsmanship, he broke out in a cold sweat. To think that even Adam's shroud, which he had brought out from the imperial ancestral temple, was unable to do anything to Fong Xingjian. How was he supposed to continue the battle? At the thought of this, he looked at the Black Mage King. Right now, the Black Mage King's countenance was also grim. The four of them had joined forces, and even true Lord Qingshan's ultimate attack had allowed Fong Xingjian to kill one, injure another, and then escape. The more the Black Mage King thought about it, the more infuriated he felt. It had been far too long since he had suffered such a loss. Alexander said, "Senior Black Mage King, I wonder where that traitor Fong cultivated that strange sword technique from. Why is it that all attacks are ineffective against him? And how did you guys manage to attack him?" This was what Alexander wanted to know the most. The greatest reason why Fong Xingjian had managed to kill one of them and escape was that the Abyss Lords and Alexander's attacks were ineffective against Fong Xingjian. This made Alexander a lamb waiting to be slaughtered, and this was something he could not accept. Hearing that, the Black Mage King narrowed his eyes slightly. Alexander continued, "Black Mage King, are you still going to hide it? Fong Xingjian's strength has risen tremendously, and he's going to hold the evil god summoning ritual very soon. Is this still the time to be hiding things? If we can't deal with Fong Xingjian then, we'll all be in big trouble." The Black Mage King smiled and said, "Your ancient path of hell should also have a related legacy. It's just that you didn't learn it well." "What is it?" Alexander asked anxiously. "You should have seen it when you were striving for the divine level. If you continue to magnify our world, there will be a microscopic world. Many of the laws in this world are different from the macroscopic world, but they can affect the macroscopic world," the Black Mage King said calmly. As the Black Mage King spoke with assurance, Alexander would occasionally frown and occasionally smile. All sorts of comprehensions started to flow in his mind. Elsewhere, Fong Xingjian went to the outskirts and then brought Charlot and his mother's elders to the Great Western region. To him, this was a piece of cake. Putting aside how terrified Charlot's mother's clan had been throughout the entire process, and how pleasantly surprised the Great Western region's second prince's faction had been after returning to the Great Western region, Charlot asked Fong Xingjian anxiously, "Teacher, how are you? Are you all right?" In his memories in his previous life, It was because Fang Xingjian had snuck into the palace at night and had been seriously injured by true Lord Qingshan's sneak attack. This had led to the failure of the evil god summoning ritual, as well as the series of setbacks that followed. Fang Xingjian shook his head and said, "It's nothing. Tell me what you remember about the evil god summoning ritual." Charlot threw a worried glance at Fang Xingjian. Although he was worried about Fang Xingjian's condition, there was nothing he could do if Fang Xingjian did not want to tell him. He knew very well how stubborn this master of his was. Charlot said, "The evil god summoning ritual will be held in the imperial capital. When the time comes, other than Alexander and the Abyss Lord, true Lord Qingshan, the black, red, gold, and purple mage kings will all be hiding in the imperial capital. The Holy See of Truth will also send 2 guardian kings to descend in an attempt to stop the ritual." At the thought of the gold mage king and the purple mage king's existences, Fang Xingjian felt a headache. The gold-robed mage controlled time, while the purple-robed mage pursued the power of reproduction and numbers. These were both very troublesome abilities. In addition to the other people's existences, even the current Fang Xingjian did not have complete confidence. Thankfully, he had killed the Abyss Lord, dealt Alexander with serious injuries, and even cut off true Lord Qingshan's system. This reduced the pressure on him a lot. At the thought of true Lord Qingshan's system, Fang Xingjian could not help but look at his stats window. This time around, after cutting off and absorbing true Lord Qingshan's system, not only had he obtained a lot of mysterious knowledge, but had also caused a slight change to appear on Fang Xingjian's stats window. This time around, after cutting off and absorbing true Lord Qingshan's system, not only had he obtained a lot of mysterious knowledge, but it had also caused a slight change to appear on Fang Xingjian's stats window. It was a progress bar, and the number on the progress bar was currently at 1%. Chapter 777. Ever since he had cut up the system in the previous parallel Earth and absorbed it into his body, Fang Xingjian had obtained a lot of knowledge from the system. Other than that, he had also discovered that his knight's system had undergone some indescribable changes. Today, after he had cut up true Lord Qingshan's Fantasy Kingdom system, these changes seemed to have reached a qualitative level, causing an additional 1% progress bar to appear on his stats window. Should I continue to cut up and absorb the system? Fang Xingjian was unable to make a judgment, but his thoughts were not on this matter. Right now, the most important thing was still the evil god summoning ritual that would take place a few days later. Therefore, Fang Xingjian continued, "What's the exact situation of the summoning?" Charlot's eyes gleamed with cold light, and they were filled with hatred. It was as if he had thought of something extremely unbearable. He said viciously, "Alexander and the others set up the evil god summoning ritual in the imperial capital because summoning the evil god requires the sacrifice of a large number of lives. The entire population of 5 million in the imperial capital is within the range of their sacrifice. They're going to sacrifice 5 million people?" When Fang Xingjian heard this, he could not help but feel extremely astonished. That was a population of 5 million. Not 50,000 or 500,000. Moreover, the 5 million people in the imperial capital were the entire empire's elites. They were the empire's countless top-notch geniuses, the backbone, and the imperial court's pillars. It could be said that the death of these 5 million people would be a devastating blow to the empire. The entire empire's politics would degenerate by several decades, or even over 100 years. Charlot smiled coldly and said, "Of course, it doesn't matter to them. As long as they can steal the evil god's power, they won't hesitate even if they have to sacrifice the entire empire. It's because once they get that invincible power, they'll be able to set up 10 empires. As for the ordinary aristocrats, ministers, and commoners, how are they any different from grass in their eyes?" Fang Xingjian knew that what Charlot said was right. In Miracle World, the difference in battle prowess between individuals was too great. This was especially so for divine-level experts. They were a completely different type of life form from ordinary people. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the difference between humans and ants was like that. With such a mentality and culture, it was not impossible for Alexander and the others to dare to sacrifice so many people. Charlot continued. But in the end, they only sacrificed 500,000 people before the ritual was successfully activated. The evil god that descended was the clone of the red evil god of the 12 evil gods. The clone of the red evil god? Feng Xingjian touched his chin and asked, "Is it powerful?" Feng Xingjian also knew about red faction black magic. Moreover, after fighting against the Red Mage King this time around, he understood how amazing red faction black magic was. The density of the Red Mage King's physical body was so high that it far surpassed his imagination. It was something he had never seen before in his life. Even if his all-conquering sword could slash through any material structure in the world, it would only be able to slash through a few centimeters of the Red Mage King's physical body before it would be difficult to enter. The opponent's body density was too high, and the energy required to cut through material structures was also too high. It could be said that he was a natural meat shield. The Red Evil God's clone would only be harder and more tanky. This was an opponent that could only fight head-on. Just thinking about it made Feng Xingjian feel that it would be troublesome. Charlot replied, "It's very troublesome. I remember that back then, none of the experts present were able to break through his defense. In the end, it was only when everyone joined forces to attack that they managed to break through the defense of the evil god's clone and slowly kill it. However, the Krieg royal family, Shang, and the four mage kings joined forces to launch a sneak attack on you, teacher. You were seriously injured, and you didn't get any benefits from the evil god's descent either." Feng Xingjian thought that it was indeed possible for everyone to join forces to get rid of the clone. Thankfully, the Abyss Lord had been killed, and true Lord Qingshan's system had been cut off. The pressure of being surrounded and killed had been greatly reduced. Despite this, it was still extremely dangerous to be surrounded by a total of 6 unrivaled experts. Charlot said, "Teacher, our greatest chance right now is to join forces with the Holy Sea of Truth. You have ties with Lord Holy Orison. This time around, if the 2 Guardian Kings sent by the Holy Sea of Truth are able to stand on our side, our chances of winning will increase greatly." The Holy Sea of Truth? Feng Xingjian looked at Charlot and asked, "Do you know who those 2 Guardian Kings are? When will they arrive?" Charlot shook his head helplessly. "There's a civil war in the north. These 2 Guardian Kings came here secretly, and no one knows their identities. However, I know that the first place they appeared was in a satellite town that is 20 kilometers south of the imperial capital. They appeared from there when the evil god ritual was about to begin and then took action to stop it. Teacher, maybe you can join forces with them to stop the ritual." Feng Xingjian's gaze flickered slightly. If what Charlot said was right, then this was a good idea. Not only did he know the Holy Orison, one of the church's guardian kings, but he had also participated in the church's martial techniques grading plan. Maybe it's time for me to come into contact with the people from the church. Feng Xingjian then thought of the black-robed man who had taken away his mother's corpse. Could he be one of the church's guardian kings? Nodding, Feng Xingjian looked at Charlot and said, "Then you can change your appearance. I'll stay in your body. You can hide your identity and search for the 2 Guardian Kings." Charlot nodded, excitement flashing in his eyes. He knew very well how strong his teacher was. However, even with how strong Feng Xingjian was, it was impossible for him to be a match for so many experts. However, if he were to add in the 2 Guardian Kings from the Holy Sea of Truth, then the outcome would be very different. While he might not have the upper hand, at least he would not be like in his previous life, where he would be surrounded and attacked by so many people that he would not even have the chance to retaliate. However, at the next moment, Charlot's expression turned bitter as he said, "Teacher, I'm only at first transition level 19. I can't change my physical body." Feng Xingjian frowned and said, "I'll help you." With that, he slapped his palm onto Charlot's body. Amidst Charlot's agonizing cries, Feng Xingjian changed his physical structure. Not only did Charlot's height become 1 6 meters, but he also became sallow and emaciated. His face looked very ordinary, just like an ordinary commoner. Even a divine-level expert would have to observe you carefully and use their martial will to scan you repeatedly before they can see your foundation. With that, Feng Xingjian turned into a stream of sword light and darted into Charlot's body. You can search for the two Guardian Kings based on your experience from your previous life. I'll need to study my sword arts properly. Feng Xingjian looked at his conjured physique, which had some slight cracks on it. In this battle, he had killed the Abyss Lord, dealt Alexander with serious injuries, and cut off true Lord Qingshan's system. However, it was true that it was not so easy to deal with the encirclement of 5 top-notch experts. He had also lost 30% of his powers. However, it was not as if he had not gained anything. The series of high-intensity battles had allowed him to gain some comprehension towards the new realm of the light pursuit sword technique. He decided to make good use of his time and study it properly, raising the profoundness of his sword arts and sword formations. Chapter 778. In the palace, Alexander's entire body was wrapped up by layers of Adam's shroud. Within the shroud, the power of his martial will continue to extend out toward the microscopic scale. They passed through physical particles, nanometers, femtometers, picometers, and gushed out toward the ends of time and space. Alexander had strived for the divine level before, so he naturally knew and had come into contact with a microscopic world. However, he had never studied the microscopic world deeply and did not really understand the connection between the microscopic world and the macroscopic world. It was like how he could go against gravity, but did not know how to change the exchange of gravitons. Right now, after receiving the Black Mage King's guidance, his cultivation could be said to have improved at a tremendous pace. Countless layers of the world's profoundness were unveiled before him. So that's how it is. I thought that at my level of the divine level, I would be pursuing the interference of time and space. However, after such a long period of time, I haven't made any progress. So it's because I'm lacking the microscopic world. If I wish to truly understand the principles of space and time, I must understand the microscopic world. In a battle between true experts, all of their powers will be used in the space of an inch. At the thought of this, Adam's shroud shrank abruptly, bringing along Alexander as it shrank and shrank, stepping into an enlarged world. In the past, he could only scan physical particles with his martial will. However, at this moment, each of them was as huge as a mountain range. With this foundation and the help of Adam's shroud, I'll definitely be able to step into Tier 6 of the divine level in the future. Alexander's body continued to shrink under the contraction of Adam's shroud, and he flew out toward the ends of space-time. At this moment, time and space seemed to gradually lose their meaning. Just you wait, Feng Xingjian. The next time we meet, I'll give you a great surprise. At a depth of 30 kilometers below the imperial capital, there were countless purple bugs darting about. The smallest of these bugs were the size of a cow's head, while the biggest ones were bigger than elephants. Their mouths kept on secreting corrosive mucus, and any soil or rocks that were covered by the mucus would instantly turn soft like sand. Then, with a light shovel from the 2 horns on their heads, they kept on shoveling soil and rocks out and swallowing them into their stomachs. Hundreds of thousands of purple bugs have been digging tunnels in the ground. Some fist-sized bugs have been gnawing the tunnels with the sharp blades on their mouths, carving numerous spell symbols on them. These runes emitted rays of purple light, revealing an incomparably mysterious aura. The Purple Mage King was almost naked as she stood in the tunnel, casually wearing a purple long robe. She walked with light footsteps, patrolling the massive underground project. Lilia stood behind her and asked, "What are you doing?" The Purple Mage King smiled and said, "Set up the formation." The evil god summoning rituals formation? Lilia frowned and said, "How terrifying are the evil god's powers? Aren't you guys worried that after the evil gods descend, no one will be able to control them? When that time comes, the people will be plunged into misery and suffering, and society will collapse." The Purple Mage King smiled and said, "Don't worry. This won't happen. Besides, don't you like Feng Xingjian? This formation can help you and Feng Xingjian. What? Lilia was stunned for a moment. Looking at the endless tunnel and the runes on it, she sank into silence. Ha 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 ha. The purple mage king laughed. Feng Xingjian doesn't have feelings, so I'll be the one to bestow him feelings. From then on, the two of you will be a match made in heaven, loving each other forever. You'll inherit the teachings of our purple-robed faction, and you'll forever wield the power of love. Deep in the mountains in the north of the central region, the first prince stood there in a daze. Right now, he seemed to be exuding a dispirited aura. There was no longer any trace of the sharpness and dominance he had shown in the past. Right now, his cultivation had only recovered to second transition, level 25. Although he still possessed the realm of a divine level expert, the ancient path of hell, and the 200 years of legacy and accumulated resources of the Krieg royal family, he did not dare to use them to recover his powers. At the thought of Feng Xingjian's elusive sword arts and unstoppable sword light, a hint of terror flashed in the depths of the first prince's eyes. Just as the first prince was waiting, a sound suddenly rang out from the trees next to him. Then, under the first prince's astonished gaze, the fifth prince walked out slowly. Back then, the fifth prince's martial will have been weakened to the point that it was like that of an ordinary person, and even his physical body had been completely destroyed. Right now, he appeared to be even weaker than the first prince, but he had recovered his battle prowess to level 19. This was a world of difference from his performance in the past. Seeing that the first prince had appeared, the fifth prince frowned and said, "Big brother, you seem to be very free. Why are you out for a stroll so late at night?" The first prince let out a cold snort and said, "Stop putting on an act. You were also called here by Shang, right?" Just as the two of them were in a state of mutual hostility, true Lord Qing Shan slowly appeared. The first thing he said when he saw the two of them was to ask, "Do you guys want to seek revenge against Feng Xingjian?" The first prince's gaze flickered, but he did not say a word. However, the fifth prince spoke first. "Of course. Does true Lord Qing Shan have any ideas?" The corners of true Lord Qing Shan's lips curled up slightly. At the next moment, countless chaotic air currents gushed forth, and the duality minute formation was activated, encompassing all three of them. "Today, I'll help you guys recover your cultivation. 3 days later, we'll join forces to kill Feng Xingjian." As he spoke, many warheads flew out from his palm. The moment each warhead appeared, they would unleash intense light and flames. There were also waves of powerful and invisible power that seemed to be able to wipe out all life force. The shock waves formed by the flames were almost comparable to an attack from a Tier 1 divine level expert. That terrifying destructive prowess caused the two princes to shudder with fear. A thought involuntarily appeared in their minds. When did such a terrifying weapon appear in the world? However, as the many warheads exploded, the chaotic air currents in the surroundings quickly gathered up, absorbing all the light and heat. Although you guys have lost all your powers, your realms are still present. Today, I'll use the 3,000 nuclear warheads that I obtained from this relic to help you guys recover your strength and recultivate to the divine level. Under the duality minute formation, many of the exploding nuclear warheads were ground up into pure energy and then gushed out rapidly toward the two princes' bodies. My powers are recovering. Sensing the endless power gushing into their bodies and the steady increase in their cultivation, even starting to charge toward the divine level, the two of them revealed expressions of surprise and joy. However, the first prince reacted very quickly and said, "Aren't you afraid of attracting Feng Xingjian's attention by doing this? Moreover, even if we recover our original powers, we won't be a match for him." Chapter 779. How can my means be something that you can imagine? True Lord Qing Shan said calmly, "Last night, I fought with Feng Xingjian in the imperial capital and forced him to retreat. I was just fretting that he wouldn't dare to fight with me. It'd be for the best if he dares to come. Moreover, since I'm going to help you guys, I can't possibly just recover your cultivation. As he spoke, an extremely profound martial art was emitted from true Lord Qingshan's martial will, merging into the minds of the two princes present. This is a supreme martial technique that I've created myself. For absolutes, 2 hegemons, and 1 annihilation. After you guys cultivate it, you'll naturally have the ability to go up against Fang Xingjian. The 4 absolutes, 2 hegemons, and 1 annihilation were the supreme martial techniques that true Lord Qingshan had exchanged from the system previously. He had once taught them to the 4 absolutes and 2 hegemons, allowing them to go up against Fang Xingjian for a short period of time. Right now, he had even taught 1 annihilation to the 2 princes. This move affected the microscopic world directly through macroscopic means. With a punch, microscopic particle waves would collide and explode, annihilating everything amidst the decay of energy. Each punch would unleash the prowess of a positron cannon. It was equivalent to a punch unleashing 100 or 1,000 times the power. As long as one's technique continued to improve, the more microscopic particles and waves would be affected, the prowess of this fist technique would be even greater. It could even be improved endlessly. This was a martial technique that could be said to be the ultimate destruction. It could even restrain Fang Xingjian's light body. Right now, in order to take revenge, true Lord Qingshan had taught all of it to the 2 princes. However, this was still not enough. Looking at the 2 princes who had closed their eyes to comprehend martial arts, true Lord Qingshan said coldly, "Are these 2 good-for-nothings really of any use? They've been defeated by Fang Xingjian so many times. I don't think that even if I help them increase their strength, they won't be of much help." With a light laugh, chaos which Lamia floated out like a puff of green smoke. She said in the world that only true Lord Qingshan could see, "These 2 people are both geniuses who have been chosen by the timeline. They're the main characters who have amassed an endless amount of luck. Fang Xingjian had defeated them over and over again, and it pushed their chi flow to a limit. Their next battle would be their final battle, and if they didn't die, then Fang Xingjian would die, and the chi flow would be unprecedentedly strong. Like now, as he spoke, the sky shone brightly, accompanied by waves of hymns and music. Under true Lord Qingshan's astonished gaze, there were even countless rays of light that seemed as if they had come to life. They turned into many small light men with wings, flying in the sky and dropping down large areas of light spots that brought along an extremely sacred aura. True Lord Qingshan let out a cold snort and said, "What extravagance!" At the next moment, a person covered in white light descended from the sky. He stepped on void space as if he was walking on invisible stairs. Wherever he passed by, there would be countless light spirits, light rain, hymns, and holy music. It was as if the entire world was singing and praising him. True Lord Qingshan said calmly, "Someone from a church? Saint? Or law kings?" The chaos which smiled. "This is one of the 3 big shots in the church, the leader who controls heavenly punishment, the extraordinary son." True Lord Qingshan thought, the extraordinary son of the church's 3 saints? The extraordinary son was covered in an intense light, and he floated 1 inch above the ground, as if he could not be bothered to come into contact with the ground. His gaze swept past the 2 princes and true Lord Qingshan, and there was no emotion in his eyes at all. It was as if the 3 of them were no different from anyone else in the world. From the beginning to the end, he had only said 1 sentence. Fang Xingjian must be killed. After saying this, streams of golden runes flashed in void space, turning into many golden rune ribbons that surrounded the 3 of them. "Don't move." The chaos which Lamia stopped true Lord Qingshan from resisting. "He's using white magic to enhance your powers." "Enhance my powers?" True Lord Qingshan appeared displeased. "He's very arrogant." The chaos which explained, "It's not that he's arrogant, but that he doesn't know how to communicate. In order to pursue the power of the God of universal truth, this person blinded himself at the age of 10, broke his ears at the age of 12, and pulled out his tongue at the age of 15. When he was 18, He requested the Law Kings to seal his senses of smell and touch as well. He did this so that he could better sense the existence of the God of universal truth. He's a complete lunatic. The amount of time he spends communicating with others in a year can be counted in seconds. Previously, when he created a sound by shaking the air to say a sentence, it was already his limit. Hearing about the extraordinary son's experiences, true Lord Qingshan's heart could not help but skip a beat. Although he did not admit it, he himself was already a lunatic. However, this extraordinary son was more than 10 times crazier than him. To think that this person was still able to cultivate and fight despite having lost his 5 senses of hearing, sight, smell, touch, and taste. What kind of willpower did he possess? Just the thought of it made true Lord Qingshan feel a little terrified. However, the chaos which sighed and said, it's because of his focus that he was able to attain his current great achievements. Among the holy sea of truth, he's the person who has grasped the most universal truth divine arts, or rather, white magic. 3 days later, in a small town in the south of the imperial capital, Charlot sat on the streets, feeling a little bored. He looked at the merchants, farmers, and knights who came and went, and a hint of helplessness appeared on his face. To think that I haven't been able to find them. Could it be that the 2 Law Kings only dared to come here at light speed after the final ritual started? Even if that's the case, they must have left behind a clone or a subordinate to relay the news. Otherwise, how could they have gotten such accurate information? However, a short moment later, he broke into a confident smile. But they're divine-level experts, after all. I've long since expected that I wouldn't be able to find them. But the things I've done these few days should have attracted their attention. Although he had not been able to find any traces of the Guardian Kings over the past few days, he had relied on his experience from his previous life to leave behind a secret mark of the holy sea of truth in the small town in order to lure them out. In his memories from his previous life, he had been constantly being pursued by the other party. Therefore, he was very familiar with the various marks and secret codes of the holy sea of truth. Just as he was thinking of this, he suddenly felt his vision turn black. Charlot had completely lost consciousness. When he woke up, he was already sitting in a small black room. A middle-aged man looked at him with a cold expression and said, "Where did you learn about those secret codes and marks?" Charlot smiled. The Empire's Emperor Alexander is preparing for the evil god summoning ritual. You guys know about this, right? The middle-aged man's countenance changed, and he asked, "Who are you?" "My master is Feng Shijian. We'd like to contact you guys and work together to stop the ritual from happening." Feng Shijian? That Feng Shijian who is on par with Alexander? The middle-aged man said with a frown. Simultaneously, he thought, right now, there's internal strife in the church, and we're just fretting that we don't have enough power to stop the ritual here. But if that Feng Shijian is really like what the rumors say and can go up against Alexander, then he'll be able to lessen our burden. With that, I'll be able to spare some effort to go up against the people from the Mage Association. Chapter 780. The middle-aged man looked at Charlot and asked, "You're Feng Shijian's disciple? What proof do you have?" Charlot had thought a way to deal with this. He took out the documents and identification he had brought from the Great Western Region and said, "This is the proof that the Great Western Region's governor gave me. There's also a stream of sword intent left behind by my master." The middle-aged man threw a glance at Feng Shijian and took the documents. At the next moment, he felt a gush of sword intent gushing toward him. The extremely sharp sword intent brushed past his body, giving him a feeling as if his soul was going to freeze. After all, he was just a liaison sent here by the church. Although he had the cultivation of a demigod with 2 tiers of demigod, when he was brushed by Feng Shijian's sword intent, he still felt as if his will was going to freeze up. The number of experts in the world who could possess such sword arts and sword intents could be counted on one's fingers. At the very least, there was no such person in the Mage Association or the Empire's royal family. Letting out a breath, the middle-aged man said, "What a powerful sword intent." As expected of a swordsman who was able to fight against Alexander without being at a disadvantage. Charlot said, "Is this all right? Can you help me contact the church's guardian king? This evil god summoning ritual is no small matter. If they succeed, it'll be a great threat to the entire world." "You can call me Albert," the middle-aged man said, shaking his head. "There's no way I can help you get the guardian king to come over directly. I'll at most report your situation. However, it's not up to me to decide whether the guardian king wants to meet you or not." Charlot nodded. "Then please report it as soon as possible. The evil god summoning ritual will be starting tomorrow at the latest. We don't have any time to waste." Albert said, "Then wait here for a while. I'll report the situation first." Charlot did not expect that he would have to wait for a total of 3 hours. He urged Albert loudly many times, but he was unable to increase the efficiency of the church's work. It was only when Albert returned to the room 3 hours later that he sighed and said, "I really want to help you, but the guardian king isn't willing to meet with you and your master." "What?" Charlot said angrily. "Did you not make things clear to them?" "I'm sorry. I made things very clear." The information that the upper echelon had left behind rang out in Albert's mind. Fang Xingjian? Who's that? The Empire's genius? A swordsman who can fight against Alexander? Humph. They just want to use the power of the church to deal with the royal family. We don't have time to participate in internal struggles of those country bumpkins. Just let them deal with the Krieg royal family. Leave the Mage Association to the Guardian Kings. Only the Guardian Kings can go up against Mage King level experts. As a member of the church, Abbott knew all too well the arrogance of the upper echelons. They did not think that Fang Xingjian would be able to be of any use in a battle between Mage Kings. In the eyes of the nobles of the church, the whole empire and the Lion Kingdom on the prairie were just rural places. Only the Church Kingdom was the center of the world. The battle in the imperial capital a few days ago was only known by a few people involved, and it was not spread out. Only the Guardian Kings and the Holy Sons could fight against the Wizard Kings. This was the experience the church had gained over the millennia. The church with the royal and king. The saint with kingdom with Swith with saints. With the saints with the Fong the of the kings. With the king with the royal. With king with saint with the royal saint. With the king with the with. After all, the situation in the north was delicate. It was already the limit for the church to send out 2 royal family members at most. Thinking of this, Albert looked at Charlot, deliberated over his words, and said, "Charlot, we need your and your master's powers. We need your help. However, the royal family members are the supreme existences in the church. Without a reason, they won't leave their respective bases. However, if the evil god ritual really starts tomorrow, we can join forces with you. As long as you can help us hold back the Krieg royal family, then we can deal with the remaining experts from the Mage Association." At this point, Abbott's eyes exuded incomparable confidence. It was true that he could be confident. As the strongest influence in the world, the Holy See of Truth would not hinder their power, even if they were to be dragged into a civil war. However, Charlot shook his head helplessly. He understood that the church still did not place much importance on the matter here. In the eyes of the church, the center of the world was still in the north, and the south was merely where some evil cultists and barbarians were. He was powerless to change this deep-rooted understanding. However, at the very least, he had formed a connection with the Holy See of Truth and could even rely on the 2 royal family members to deal with the Mage Association. At the thought of this, a hint of joy appeared in Charlot's heart. "All right, since that's the case, then I'll leave the Mage Association to you." After being sent back to the small town by Albert, Charlot started to call out to Fang Xingjian in his mind. However, even after calling out to his master a few times, he did not receive any response. It was only until the last call that Fang Xingjian's weak voice rang out. "I'm at a critical juncture in comprehending sword arts. I'll hide in your consciousness tomorrow and act according to the situation. I'll come out at the crucial moment." "That can't be." Hearing Fang Xingjian's reply, Charlot continued to call out to Fang Xingjian, but he did not receive any response. patting himself on the head. He said helplessly, "Is Master engrossed in sword arts in such a situation? Unless my life is in danger or my comprehension ends, he won't wake up." Thinking back to his memories, Feng Xingjian seemed to have been in such a situation a few times. Each time, he would not wake up until the very last moment. However, each time he woke up, his sword arts would improve tremendously. Shaking his head, a hint of determination flashed in Charlot's eyes. For Master to fall into such a deep state of comprehension, he must have made a huge breakthrough in his swordsmanship. Unless it's a sudden inspiration warning, he won't wake up. That means that it's either me, him, or someone important to Master who is in danger. Otherwise, Master will continue to be in this state of comprehending sword arts until the comprehension ends. If that's the case, I can only rely on me. At the thought of this, Charlot kept on recalling the process of the evil god ritual tomorrow. The corners of his lips curled up into a confident smile. "Master, since that's the case, I'll personally bring you to the center of the ritual tomorrow to meet up with the two guardian kings. I'll leave the rest to you." At the thought of this, Charlot headed out of the town based on his memories. Seeing that there were more nights than in the past few days, he thought, as expected, the number of nights is increasing by the day. Alexander and the others have never thought of sealing off the news. At the thought of the countless knights who had been attracted by the evil god ritual, Charlot smiled bitterly and shook his head. For something like an evil god's clone, experts below the divine level, or tier 3 of the divine level or below, had no hope of getting their hands on it. However, greed was too terrifying. Even if many people did not have the ability, they would still come to the imperial capital under the control of greed, fantasizing that they would be lucky enough to obtain the evil god's powers. They're not fools. They're just too greedy. But if this wasn't the case, I wouldn't have a chance and could only wake Master up directly. At the thought of this, Charlot had already walked out of the village and headed toward a village in the northeast. He remembered that there was a group that had entered the center of the ritual. Chapter 781. Charlot dashed all the way, crossing a river and a stretch of forest before arriving at a small town in the mountains. This was another small town near the imperial capital. Due to its geographical location, it had always been a resting place for merchants from all over the world. Countless goods were gathered here, and many small merchants who were unable to set up stalls in the imperial capital chose to gather here. Gradually, a rather famous market was formed. In the recent few days, as the news of the evil god summoning ritual spread, more and more knights gathered in this small town. Charlot knew that this news was deliberately released by Alexander and the others. It seemed that after ascertaining that the Holy See of Truth was unable to send out too many battle prowess, they intentionally attracted more knights over to prevent a lack of offerings. At the thought of this, the corners of Charlot's lips could not help but curl up into a cold smile. After arriving in the small town, Charlot did not look for anyone. Instead, he found a random corner and sat down. He looked at the night sky in the direction of the imperial capital and let out a sigh. Although he had made contact with the Holy See of Truth, he still did not have any confidence in the battle situation the next day. Shaking his head, Charlot slowly sank into a deep sleep. His mind was still filled with the scenes of the Krieg royal family, the Mage Association, Feng Xingjian, and the people from the Holy See of Truth killing each other. Suddenly, a wave of noise rang out, startling Charlot awake. Charlot opened his eyes and was stunned for a moment. However, he immediately regained his senses and looked toward the sky in the direction of the imperial capital. A huge purple light pillar soared into the sky, and the entire sky seemed to have turned purple. The purple light was reflected onto the ground, covering everyone and everything in a layer of purple light, giving off an extremely ominous feeling. As it started, Charlot pursed his lips. He knew that the Purple Mage King had activated the formation and joined forces with Alexander's divine country, bringing the entire imperial capital under their control. Right now, the imperial capital had completely become an abnormal space-time that was independent from a land. If one wished to stop the evil god summoning ritual, they would have to enter deep into it and defeat the person who had activated the ritual. Then it's time for them to come out. As the great abnormality occurred, the many knights in the small town formed groups and rushed toward the imperial capital. If I remember correctly, I need to find a group that has the strength to enter the center but isn't a bloodthirsty and cruel person of the evil path. Charlot did not follow them. Instead, he hid at the entrance of the town and waited for batches of experts to come out. When a group of people appeared, his eyes narrowed. It's them. It was a group of 2 men and 1 woman. There was a middle-aged man, a young man, and a young girl. According to the memories of his previous life, Charlotte clearly remembered the identities of these 3 people. They came from the Eastern Sand region. The middle-aged man was called Yushan, and he was the Eastern Sand region's deputy governor. His nickname was Breaking Mountains with a Single Punch. Right now, his cultivation should be at second transition, level 29. As for the young man, he was his disciple, Clade, a second transition, level 24 conferred knight, and a genius from the Eastern Sand region. The young lady with red hair, who looked very pretty, was Yushan's daughter, Yuxianru, who had just completed her first transition at level 19. Just 16 years old, she looked innocent and pure, but also full of youthful vigor. She could be said to be the dream lover of countless teenagers. This time around, they had also received the news and rushed to the imperial capital, wanting to try their luck and see if they could get share of the loot. Seeing that the 3 of them had left the village, Charlot followed them without saying a word. Thankfully, Yushan and Clade were not in a hurry, and they also had to take care of Yuxianru's cultivation. The 3 of them did not move very fast, and Charlot was able to keep up with them, albeit with difficulty. However, 5 minutes later, Charlot suddenly lost sight of the 3 of them. He then felt a pain in his shoulder. Yushan had grabbed him by the shoulder. Clade and Yuxianru also walked out from the forest at the side. The man was handsome, while the lady was pretty. They looked like a pair of wallflowers. They looked at Charlot and asked sternly, "Who are you? Why are you following us?" Charlot was prepared for this. "You're the Eastern Sand region's deputy governor, Yushan, right?" Yushan frowned and said, "You are." "I'm Prince Daniel's 3rd son, David," Charlot said. Prince Daniel was also a member of the royal family. However, 2 generations ago, he was no longer of the same faction as Alexander and the others. He did not have any land and was not even a demigod. He stayed in the imperial capital all year round and became a famous profligate son. Pretending to be his son was an idea that Charlot had thought of. The evil god summoning ritual has started. If you guys wish to enter, you'll have to rely on me. It's because you guys don't know the structure of the Great Formation. Yushan and the others exchanged a glance. Clade frowned as he looked at Charlot and said, "How can you prove what you said?" Charlot suddenly punched out with a spiral fist force, giving off a feeling as if it was going to suck one's soul in. Seeing this punch, Yushan blurted out, "Great Hell's Millstone? It seems that you're really a member of the royal family." The martial arts of the ancient path of hell were great techniques that only the Krieg royal family could cultivate. As the Eastern Sand region's deputy governor, Yushan had the honor of witnessing this great hell's millstone before. Charlot said, "Do you believe me now? You guys can bring me into the imperial capital, and I can tell you the location of the royal family's treasure vault. Now that the Great Formation has been activated, the entire palace's treasure vault is unguarded. This is the best time to enter." The 3 of them exchanged a glance and communicated something. Then Yushan put down Charlot and said, "All right, we'll bring you into the imperial capital. However, this time around, experts are gathering from all directions, and the imperial capital is extremely dangerous. If you dare to lie to us." Looking at the trio's wary and guarded gazes, Charlot patted his chest and said, "Don't worry, I won't lie to you guys." The 4 of them headed in the direction of the imperial capital together. Yushan and Clade led the way in front, while Charlot and Yuxianru, who were only at the first transition, followed behind. Looking at Charlot, who was walking increasingly slower, Yuxianru could not help but ask, "You're considered a member of the royal family?" Your cultivation is too weak. Why do I feel that you're even weaker than me? Clade smiled coldly and said, Junior Marshall's sister, don't be fooled by his reputation. Prince Daniel is from the worst branch of the royal family to begin with. His son is no different from ordinary aristocrats. Charlot smiled awkwardly and thought, although their attitude is a little bad, at the very least, this group of people won't kill people to extort confessions. A short moment later, the four of them arrived at the main road 1 kilometer away from the imperial capital's eastern gate. They could see that the entire imperial capital was encompassed by a layer of dense light screen, and they could no longer see the interior of the imperial capital clearly. Looking at the imperial capital in this state, Yushan said, How do we enter like this? I sense that the purple power is extremely dangerous. Charlot shook his head, indicating that he did not know. However, he sighed inwardly. This is a formation set up by the Purple Mage King. Only people can enter, but not leave. I'm sorry, but I can't tell you guys. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.